Story 1. Dad divorced my mom for his secretary. Now, stepmom tries to control me and ruin my life, so I kicked her out of my property. My father divorced my mom in his 50s. Yes, you heard it right. Not for any other reason but because he fell in love with a younger woman. Well, my dad is 54 and my mom is 52. 4 years back, my dad was promoted to be the director of the company he was working for 25 years. Yeah, it was a great achievement for him, and we all were so proud to see him leading the company where he joined as an intern 25 years ago. My mom, on the other hand, owns her own advertising company. Though mom's company is not as huge as dad's, still she is the boss there. So yeah, I come from a rich pedigree. As for me, I'm 26, male, and a successful graphic designer. No, I don't work for any company but my own. I'm a freelancer and on my way to start my own venture soon. Fingers crossed. I owe this to my mom because she was already in this digital space ever since the internet revolution happened, and I got exposure to this freelancing world pretty early. I started graphic designing in my teens, and by the time I passed high school, I was earning thousands per week. I won't say my parents had a perfect marriage because I had hardly seen them together for many years. They both are so busy leading their individual lives and flourishing in their careers that they barely have time for each other. But it was not always this way. Growing up, my parents were the best teammates you would ever see. It was like they vibed so much on everything, especially their passion for work. They were ambitious, lively, and most fun-loving people. I had a very happy and fulfilling childhood. It was during college that I noticed them drifting apart and leading their individual lives. I thought it was a natural process of focusing on individual lives after a certain age because I never saw them fighting or talking evil about each other. But later, I got to know it was something different. My father had lost interest in my mom after she hit menopause. He said her hormones were getting too unbearable. And guess what? He found solace in his secretary. After Dad's promotion to director, he was assigned a secretary. No, the affair started long before that, when the rumors of Dad's promotion floated in the office. But after his official promotion, Dad got serious about her. When Mom got to know about him, she wished him good luck and set him free without any fuss. That's what I love about my mom the most. She is the most sophisticated and bold woman I have ever seen. But before setting him free, she ensured to take what was hers: the house in which they lived and a huge part of Dad's savings as alimony. No, she was not a gold digger. She and Dad had together built that wealth, and she cannot let a freeloader enjoy her hard-earned money. So after the divorce, Dad was left with practically nothing except his car and some of his savings, which he was lavishing, showering on his new profound love/secretary. My parents' divorce was smooth, and Dad complied with whatever Mom demanded because he knew there was no point fighting with her. She would have destroyed him. Thank God I had moved out to my own place before all this came into the picture. I had rented a grand 2-bedroom apartment during my college years to enjoy my life to the fullest. I was earning enough through my freelancing projects to pay my rent and utilities, so yeah, why not? I didn't want to pick sides. I loved both of them. I'm a grown-up man, and I understand both of their perspectives. P.S. I was closer to Mom, but also on good terms with Dad. I respected Dad because he was always good to Mom. He always supported and cheered for her success. Dad and his secretary, or lover, whatever you call her, started living together in a rented apartment because Mom had kicked him out of her house. Dad's company had a strict, no-dating coworker policy. Dad wanted to keep it low-key until he figured out his next move, but his lady love was too excited to tell her work best friends about hitting the jackpot. Yeah, Dad was a jackpot for a single mom working as a secretary, taking calls and messages. No one is a friend at work. Her best friend leaked out that she was dating Dad, and they both were fired. Yes, Dad lost his director's position because of this woman. Mom had the last laugh. Yes, a few months back, I bought my own house. It is a lavish 3-bedroom penthouse. Thank you. The thing is, last week my dad visited me and asked me for a favor. He requested that I let him and Linda, his lover, 29, female, stay with me in my house. Dad is planning to marry this woman next month, and he wants to move in with me. Dad is currently jobless. He is trying his hand at new ventures, but it would take time to hit off. Meanwhile, he is surviving on his savings after he and Linda both lost their jobs. I told Dad that I needed time to think about it because I moved out to enjoy my privacy, and their stay at my place would interfere with my personal life. Dad assured me that he and Linda would not bother me at all, and I could continue to live the way I wanted. I discussed this with Mom, and she said it was my choice. See, she is not a vindictive woman. She told me that I was old enough to make all these decisions by myself. I want to help Dad, but I don't know how this woman is going to be. I'm just so confused about it. My dad has always been a loving and caring father. I'm feeling bad for turning him down, especially when he needed the help most. I would appreciate it if anyone could share their learnings from a similar experience. Update 1. Hey guys. Sorry it took a while for me to update. I'll start from where I left off. After much discussion and contemplation, I agreed to let Dad and Linda stay at my house. Dad said they would move in after their wedding. I thought the wedding to be a simple one because it was a second wedding for both, but no, they had a lavish wedding, and after the wedding they were off to their honeymoon. I was wondering where all that money came from for the wedding and honeymoon, but it was none of my business. It's been a couple of months since they have moved in. As I said, Linda is a single mom to a 5-year-old daughter who is a little monster version of her mom. She roams around in the house creating a mess. Mind you, she is not that cute little girl that you're imagining. She is one of those entitled brats who wants everything they see or else they break off things at the house. Dad is yet to set up his business. He is after investors to get them to invest in his business. Meanwhile, I don't see Linda going for interviews. I guess she is happy to lounge on Dad's money. She has a visitor every other day. Sometimes it's family, sometimes it's her friends, and sometimes some random strangers whom she had befriended at the supermarket. So basically, she is one of those gossip-mongering women who call themselves social animals, but in reality, what they do is warm the cushion and gossip. It may sound normal for others, but it seems odd for me to see her whole day sitting at the house doing nothing. This is because I have never seen my mom lounging at the house day in and day out except on the days when she was sick. Mom used to work even on weekends, even though for a few hours when everyone was slumbering. I don't know if Dad has told Linda about his finances. Seeing her lifestyle, it doesn't look like Dad has money problems. It is either that Dad has not told her about his exact financial situation, or it is that he was lying to me. The second one is likely to be true because I have witnessed his divorce situation and how he had to give most of his things to Mom. This lady has to be told that Dad had no money, and she needs to move her ass if she wants to lead a decent life. Anyway, they are the least of my concerns now. Carpe diem. I'm over the moon after meeting Alice, 23, female. She is a vlogger, not that famous though, yet I can't reveal her identity. I have fallen head over heels for her charms. I was a fan of her work. Recently, I started editing her videos, so yeah, she was my client. We had never met in person. Our conversation was only virtual calls. Sounds classic romance. But yeah, I fell for her while editing her videos. I mean, she is gorgeous in her travel videos, but the raw, uncut footage of hers is the one that drove me crazy. Okay, no more oozing over her beauty. Coming straight to the point, after much hesitation, I finally asked her out last month. It wasn't a date per se, but more a work-related meet. She is prettier IRL. She understood I was hitting on her, and she reciprocated my advances. We have been meeting regularly after that, and I'm hoping this goes a long way. Alice and I usually hang out at her place. Privacy is not a concern. She lives with her teenage sister, 2 dogs, and 3 cats. She lives in the house the sisters have inherited from their grandfather. Alice's parents are separated, and they married different people. Hence, the 2 sisters lived with their grandfather until he passed away 4 years ago. Since then, Alice has been the guardian of her little sister. So even if my house was empty, Alice wouldn't have moved in with me. Still, I just hope that Dad's business kicks off and they move out of my house. Linda and her daughter don't bother me much, but of late I find Linda crossing her boundaries. It has happened just twice when she commented on my living style, but I have snapped her away. I'm not someone who is going to let her inside my territory. If she crosses her line, I'll put her in place. Update 2. Hey guys, today is exactly 1 year to my last update. There's a lot to catch up on, so hang in there. First of all, I'm engaged. Yes, I went down on my knees last week and proposed to Alice. I know it might sound too early for others, but I think I've always been sure about her ever since I met her for the first time. Coming to the situation at my house. Not good. Linda is an evil woman. I won't blame her completely because I think Dad has also kept her in delusion about his financial status and has given air to her narcissism. For the initial few months, she didn't bother me, though she had friends and family visiting her every other day. They didn't disturb me, but eventually, I found Linda crossing her boundaries. She started commenting that I keep my room messy and that I need to clean my laundry often. I mean, who was she to tell me all this? My mom never entered my room ever since I grew up. I'm living a life on my own. I ignored it a few times, but when she started nagging, I involved Dad. I told him privately to keep Linda in check. He apologized on her behalf and told her to stay away from me. She didn't take it well that I had reported her to Dad, but she didn't do anything. After a few months, Dad went on an official trip to San Francisco to meet his investors. Linda used this opportunity to torment me. At least she tried to. She started ordering me to do the household chores like doing the dishes, cleaning the laundry, and even mowing the lawn. Of course, I didn't listen. I cooked my own food and did the dishes and laundry whenever I wanted to. It was my house, and no one got to set rules for me in my house. My ignorance didn't go down well for her, and once she screamed at me that I was a lazy bum lounging on my dad's money and doing nothing. What? This woman seriously doesn't know the truth. She thinks I was living at my dad's house and surviving on his money, while the truth is just the contrary. The thing is, I work from home because of the nature of my work. Oh, come on. I'm self-employed, and this woman thinks I'm jobless, surfing the internet or passing time on my laptop. Haha. I wanted to confront her regarding the house thing, but I didn't know what Dad had told her. I feared that the truth might strain their relationship, so I let this woman live inside the bubble until Dad came back from his work trip. I didn't want to disturb him when he was already in a stressful situation dealing with the investors. If one Linda was not enough, I had a mini version of hers bringing down my house. I tell you, she is growing monstrous day by day. She pulls down my curtains, plays with my important electronic gadgets, and breaks them off every other day. Linda doesn't care to impart any discipline to her. In that 1 month when Dad was away, Linda tested my patience to the extreme. Day by day, her demands grew. On some days, she asked me to clean the house, and sometimes she would urge me to do the dishes. Of course, I didn't do it, but her constant nagging was getting on my nerves. I stopped hanging out in the living room to avoid her, but she started knocking on my door and ordering me to do household chores. I was on house arrest in my own home. When Dad arrived, I didn't waste any time and confronted him about Linda's behavior. I told him I couldn't share the roof with her. She has to tone down or leave the house. Dad apologized on her behalf and said that she was 3 months pregnant and it was her hormones which were creating a problem for her. I remembered that Dad divorced Mom because of her raging menopausal hormones. Now how is he going to deal with Linda? Anyway, I wanted to chase Linda out of my house, but Dad pleaded to give him some more months to sort this out. I told him about Alice and that I was thinking of settling down with her soon, and by then I would need privacy in my house. I hadn't proposed to Alice at that time. He assured me that within 6 months his business would kick off, and he would be able to find a place of his own. I asked him if he had told Linda that the house was mine because she was bossing around. He didn't respond to this question and diverted to another topic. I'm guessing he is not, and he did not intend to tell her the truth. God knows what he has seen in that woman that he had put everything at stake for her. Whatever. I'm mostly staying at Alice's house these days, so it's a relief for me. I hope I get rid of Linda as soon as possible. Update 3. This Linda woman is just unstoppable. In my last update, I mentioned that I proposed to Alice and intend on marrying her in the next few months. But this Linda has sworn to trouble me. Just a month after I engaged with Alice, she visited my house. Usually, she doesn't come to my place because I stay at Alice's place for most of the days. But this time I got a viral fever, and it was so intense that I was not able to lift my head. She knew about my family dynamics but not in the detail that Linda thinks the house to be hers and all that. I'm not a gossiper. so I avoid small talk. My fever was so intense that Alice stayed with me for a couple of days to take care of me. Linda used the opportunity to turn Alice against me. She told her that I was a lazy bum doing nothing. Alice knew about my profession and my earnings, so she defended me. Linda changed her approach and said that it was not just about earning money. A man should help his wife with the household chores, but I don't lift a finger in the house, and that Linda cooks, cleans, and does everything for me. She said that it is because of my patriarchal upbringing. My dad also doesn't help her with anything, even during her pregnancy. She has to do everything in the house. Alice is not a gold digger after my money, but she definitely looks forward to a man who would help her with household chores and not leave everything to her. This topic may sound trivial to men, but for women, it's a deal breaker. Trust me. If this was not enough, Linda also told Alice that I have a cheater's blood, like Dad cheated on Mom to marry Linda. She went on to lie that I had already cheated on Alice and brought other women to the house. Alice asked her the details of the woman, and as per Linda's description, Alice said that those women were just my friends and co-workers. But Linda said that she had seen me doing them. It was all BS. I was too sick to notice the change in her behavior. Alice left for her house the next day. I recovered after a week and went to meet Alice. She sounded very often doubtful about continuing the relationship. When I asked her, she said nothing, just that she thinks we are rushing into things. I instantly knew that it had to be something about Linda because Alice is not a confused person. She said yes to my proposal and she meant it. I straight away asked her if Linda had told her anything. Initially, she was reluctant to admit it, but when I pushed her, she told me the truth. I told Alice about the whole truth about how Linda is an evil woman and was delusional about Dad's financial condition and all that. Alice's concern was not money. She needed a supportive partner and not someone who treated her like a doormat. I realized that the damage was done, and the more I tried to convince her at that point, the more she would drift away. I decided to give her the time she needed, but I had to cut out the poison from my life, and that was Linda. I went home, shouting at Linda about what she had told Alice. She smirked at me and said, "Truth." I stormed into her room and started throwing her stuff out in the living room. She hurled abuses at me and dared me not to cross the line. She swore to make me homeless if I didn't stop. She threatened to call the cops and report me to Dad. I yelled at her to do whatever she wanted. She shouted that it was her house and I dared not mess with her. I gave a mad laugh and burst her bubble. I told her that the house was mine and Dad had pleaded with me to let them live here, so it would be better if she stitched her dirty mouth and left the house. She abused me and tried to pull me by my collar to drag me out of the house. I freed myself and threatened her to dare not lay her fingers on me. Dad arrived home in no time. I guess she had called him right when I was throwing her stuff. Dad held me and tried to pacify me. I didn't spare him either and told him that he had committed a grave mistake by bringing that whore into his life. She wanted Dad to thrash me for that word, but Dad yelled at her to stay shut. She insisted Dad throw me out of the house. Finally, Dad had to reveal the truth that the house was mine. She was shocked and called him a cheater and all sorts of names. Dad took me aside and pleaded with me to give them one last chance for Linda. I said no way because she had tried to break my engagement, and I could not let her ruin my life. She had tormented me enough. I crossed my line and said, "You can take that whore wherever you want. I can't let her make my place a house." Dad gave up after that, packed all their stuff and left. All these while I heard Linda cursing me, Dad, and even my mother. I wanted to go out and smack her head but didn't want any more trouble in life, and now when the troublemaker was about to leave. It's been a week since then. Although it was satisfying to give back to Linda, it's a fact that my relationship with Dad is ruined. I know I crossed the line by abusing Linda in such a way, but I hope Dad understands that Alice means everything to me, and Linda tried to sabotage that. The next day, I went to meet my mom and told her everything. She laughed her heart out with a glass of wine. "I told you she is a woman of class." She asked Alice out for dinner and clarified the air about the patriarchal thing in the family. Mom's statement was comforting to Alice because she spoke the truth about Dad being supportive and respectful even though they were separated. Mom doesn't push her opinion, but the way she speaks with her guts, anyone can get convinced. Mom asked me to give some space to Alice and let her make the decision. I'm hopeful that things will get better as she still wears my ring. Mom says that Linda would soon start manhunting after knowing that Dad is broke. Mom calls Linda a serial chaser. Funny, yeah, because she chases wealthy men one after another. I don't know about Dad's status, and I no longer feel bad for him because he had brought this on himself. He made a wrong choice. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Caught my wife cheating after 17 years of marriage, but I focused on myself while she struggles to get by. I am so devastated right now. I don't even know where to start. This is a long story. The only reason I even found this sub is because this has been trapped in my head all day, and I haven't been able to speak to anyone about it. Please be kind. So, I've been married 16.5 years to my wife, 21. We have had ups and downs. When I met her, she was the nicest, kindest woman I had ever met. I literally told her she was going to be my wife 2 minutes after meeting her. We have 2 kids that are my entire world. After our second child, she started to get distant, depressed, and different. I thought she was struggling with depression. She refused to look into it. She wanted couples counseling, but this was during the recession, and I was working 4 jobs and a side business just to barely make it another month. I couldn't afford another $50 a week, especially when she wouldn't talk to me. I asked her what was wrong, and she'd always say, I don't know, but she'd have good weeks and bad weeks. Sometimes she'd be great. Others she'd be mean and disrespectful. Once we were back on our feet, I begged her to go to counseling with me. She eventually said okay, but I don't think she liked it. We went to a woman that I think she thought was going to just tell us that I was doing everything wrong and needed to do better. She didn't at all. At first, she told her the same thing I did. I can't work with, I don't know. So my wife said she needed more help around the house. Cool. This was 2015. Since then, I've worked 3 jobs, vacuumed the house, emptied the dishwasher and sink daily, helped with the laundry, taken out the trash, and straightened up the house. Things were good for a bit. Then she got mean again. This time, she started snapping at my daughter a lot. Finally, I pulled her aside and told her that I would never divorce her. I would try to work and make our marriage better for as long as it took. But I think because my daughter is so much like me, she was taking her venom out on her, and I can't allow that. So if she wanted a divorce, that's what we'd do. The next day, she said she wanted to try and make it work, and for a few years, things were good. She even went to a doctor and got prescribed an antidepressant but insisted on the lowest dose. Fast forward to 2020. We went right back to the meanness and disrespect, but worse. There was total disdain in her voice whenever she spoke to me and a look of disgust whenever I showed up somewhere. It hurt. Sex was never a problem with us, and we both seemed to really enjoy each other. But when she'd get in these moods, she'd withhold. Still, I never cheated, even though, as a bartender, I had many offers. At one point, my sister told me she just assumed I had been cheating because she knew my wife wasn't putting out for so long. I told her I'd never do that. So now we are here. Last month, after a wedding, we were at a hotel, and I was hoping to fool around when she told me flat out, I don't want you. I think we should get divorced. We agreed to do it but hold off until after the holidays for the kids. She fell asleep 10 minutes later. I laid in bed with tears pouring down my face for 3 hours that I thought it was going to be the most pain I ever felt. Then there's today. A week ago, she had to go to a party for my daughter's softball team at midnight. She wasn't home, so I checked our Life 360 app, and she was at an Applebee's. Weird, but I thought she met her friend for a drink. The thing is, she was there until 1 a.m., but they closed at 12 a.m. I asked where she went, and she said some bar with the people from the party, never said Applebee's, which was odd. 2 days later, she said her boss told her she had to put a password on her phone because of work emails. Now I was suspicious. Today, her mom called and asked if I could help her husband move a rug. So I went to help. When I was done, I stood outside and looked on the Life 360 app to see if she had left work. She had. So I decided to try something. My wife has a bad habit of needing to talk on the phone when she drives, so I called her. She was short and said she had to go because she was talking to her mom, who was standing right in front of me. Okay, I went home. When she got there, I asked how her mom was, and as she told me I had seen her today, she said she hadn't and asked where I saw her. I said, at her house when I called you. Her face dropped. She tried some half-ass excuses but finally admitted she had been seeing someone for a few months. So before we agreed to divorce, I was shell-shocked. 10 minutes later, she was acting like nothing happened. I don't know if it was to not tip off the kids or because she just doesn't care that she crushed me, but I suspect the latter. I couldn't even talk to anyone about it, as we have kept it secret that we agreed to divorce so nobody slipped to my kids, and we had to go to a Christmas village tonight. So we worried all night. My kids knew something was wrong with me but just thought I was in a bad mood. My son literally said, "You sound hurt. I just don't know what I'm going to do." The prospect of divorce was already stressful enough, and I've lost 20 pounds in the past month without even trying, just figuring out how we can do this without me losing my house. I've spent the last 15 years paying off $10,000 in credit card debt, $155,000 in student loans, and $45,000 for a car. Now I'm going to owe her at least $40,000 for the house. It's going to be painful, but I think I can do it. I was finally starting to mentally prepare myself for the divorce, and then this betrayal just hit me like a ton of bricks. In the last month, she's hurt me more than I ever thought possible. I don't even recognize the woman I married anymore. I don't even know what to do. My daughter's going to be heartbroken when we tell her we're splitting up, but I don't even know if I should tell her about this because I don't want her hating her mom. I'm lost, confused, stressed beyond belief, and heartbroken. And I look at my wife, and she looks like she couldn't care less. Thank you for listening. I don't even know if what I wrote is too loud or too much off topic. But either way, I thank you because it was very therapeutic to just type it out and get it off my chest, even if I'm typing this with more tears streaming down my face. Thank you guys. Update 1, 3-month update from D-Day. Okay, so it's been 3 months from my initial post, and it's been quite a trip. Please excuse the length of this post. I got a lot of advice on my initial post. Look at my submission history to see the original story. But I decided to follow my gut on how to proceed, and it's going okay. Still not done yet, as expected, considering it's only been a few months. So anyway, a week after my post, I found the guy's name when she was sending a Facebook message on her computer. Apparently, that's their sole way of communicating, most likely because he's married with 3 kids. He's also a doctor and rich. That one was a real punch in the gut to a guy working 3 jobs to survive. On Christmas, I found out she had told her whole family we were divorcing, along with my sister and my cousin's wives. Meanwhile, I had still told nobody out of fear of it getting back to my kids before the holidays were over. Her mom was not happy. Thought she was making the biggest mistake of her life. Same with my sister and her best friend. She didn't care. She also left out the part about her cheating, of course. I couldn't talk to her mom at Christmas because she was already starting to cry, and I didn't want to tip off my kids. So I set it up to talk to her a few days later. The next day, my wife and I sat down and talked. I told her I didn't want her seeing the guy again until everything was done. It was disrespectful, and if she wanted him to divorce his wife, she doesn't treat a friend like that. She agreed. Then we discussed how to split things up. I think I did okay. No alimony, no child support, 50-50 custody. We both supply clothes for the kids. Everything else gets split equally. I'm keeping the house. I have to pay her $43,000 in equity. In the end, she walked with about $40,000. She owes her dad $110,000, has an 800 credit score, and 0 debt, all thanks to me. When I finally went to speak to her mom, I found out that when she found out we were going to talk, she came clean to her. She originally lied about cheating when her mom asked, then told her the truth after my call. Her mom was furious. Really ripped into her, then cried to me that she was scared I was going to cut her out of my life, which I assured her would never happen. Fast forward to mid-January. Now I'm down 40 pounds. I'm going to the gym every day to relieve stress. Now we have to tell my kids. I told her I wouldn't lie to my kids, but I wasn't going to just out her either. I said if they asked to try to steer the conversation a different way. She said she felt the same way. The thing is, I knew this wouldn't fly with my daughter. She's like a 14-year-old clone of me. She can spot a lie a mile away, and that's what happened. Before we even said anything, my daughter asked if we were getting divorced. When we sat them down, my wife said yes, and my kids lost it, lots of crying. I saw them crying, and I started crying. Then my wife made a big mistake. She said, "Listen, we both want this," and that's when my daughter let her have it with everything she had. She screamed, "That's a lie. My father would never want this. You want this. Look at him, he's crying. I've never seen him cry in my life. This is all you." Then she asked if my wife was cheating on me. My wife tried to change the subject, but she wasn't having it. She grilled her while screaming, "Tell me the truth," over and over until my wife fessed up. After that, it was like I could see her brain moving. She started calling out every red flag over and over and made my wife confess to it in 3 minutes. She got more out of her than I did in a month. Afterwards, I spoke to my kids alone. My son is 12 and just needed reassurance that things were going to be okay and would change as little as possible. Although now I can see him dreading when things finally finish. My daughter told me she was crying for me, not her, because of how hurt I had to be. I comforted her and made her feel better. Then she asked me to make her a promise because I've never broken a promise to my kids. She asked me to promise that if, when this is all over, if my wife loses her new house and needs a place to stay for a while, I would let her stay here. Of all this going on, she could have asked for anything, and she looked out for her mom. Couldn't say no. When she talked to her mom, she asked her to promise to stop talking to the guy. She broke that promise after 2 weeks. Since then, she started sneaking around again and seeing him for half-hour stints at places like Target. I caught her again and again. We had a blowout, and again she agreed to stop seeing him, even though she still talks to him. Apparently, she has feelings for him now. Hey, like I said, she can't hide it from my daughter, so eventually she'll know. There's no need for me to tell her right now. I'm in the process of refinancing my house, and she's looking for a house of her own. She's got her rich aunt co-signing for her, so hopefully she'll find something soon. Also, one other thing, and I know this one is going to be controversial on this sub. Yes, I have proof, and yes, I know everything about this guy now, but I have decided not to tell his wife. I'm not proud to say it, but my motives are completely selfish and self-serving. The fact is, if I tell her, they get divorced, and then when my wife leaves, she has a ready-made relationship waiting for her. A rich guy who, even after divorce, will still be rich, taking her on expensive dates and nice vacations, helping her with her bills, etc. While I struggle. As much as I want to hurt this guy, I want to hurt her more. When she leaves, her sneaking around is over. But it isn't. They won't be able to go out on dates. She'll get to see how much of a side piece she really is. They'll only be able to meet at her house, and he'll have to leave as soon as he's finished. He won't be giving her any money because it could tip off his wife, and now that she's feeling for him, she'll see if he's going to leave his wife and family for her. I'm betting he won't, but if he does, fine, but he's going to have to be the one to have the balls to do it. I'm not going to do his dirty work for him. That's what happened with her rich aunt. She dated a married man. The wife found out and left, and she moved right in. Went from being a broke single mom to a millionaire. That might happen with my wife, but I'm not going to help make it happen. Thanks for reading. I still read this sub all the time, and it's been extremely therapeutic. Please try to be nice. I know everyone won't agree with everything in this post. Just please try to understand that every situation is different. Thank you. Update 2. It's been 16 months since I found out. Here's an update. So if you look at my post history, you'll see what happened. Caught my wife cheating after almost 17 years of marriage. So the divorce finalized this past August. I promised my kids their lives would change as little as possible, and I've kept that promise. In August, we finalized the divorce. She was looking for houses while living here. She got outbid 16 times. I found a house around the corner for me that she loved. I spoke to the owner, and he basically let her have it without taking any other bids. She never would have gotten the house without me, which makes me feel good, as my kids are now never more than 30 seconds away from me. Our divorce agreement worked out great for me. No alimony, no child support, 50-50 custody. I kept the house, and her equity was able to refinance before interest rates skyrocketed. The next few months, I basically refurnished my house after splitting the furniture, changed some stuff around, changed pictures, focused on that and my kids, stayed positive, kept going to the gym and working. It's been good. I've been friendly with her throughout, which put my kids at ease and helped them get used to everything. She even came to Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve at my sister's. People think I'm crazy, but I let go of the ill will and helped my kids celebrate the holidays normally, and that makes me happy. Financially, I've been doing great. While I'm not sure, but I think she's struggling. She was never the best at budgeting money. We are supposed to split everything the kids need outside of food and clothes, but I wind up paying for more than I should, which I don't mind because I know it's going to my kids. In December, I met a beautiful, wonderful woman. She lives about an hour away and is divorced with 2 kids. Because of the custody schedule, we only get to see each other a few times a month, but she's amazing and really makes me happy. I don't know what my ex's dating life is like. I don't know if she still sees the guy or not. I know she's been out with a couple of other people, but I don't ask about it. I know one night she went out with a guy 3 weeks after she moved out, and she got jumped by 4 girls and had the beat out of her, which I'm not gonna lie, made me laugh. As far as the guy she was cheating on me with, well, we have some mutual friends that I've told. One couple, friends with him, saw him with his family at a function and started having a conversation in front of them where they mentioned my name and that I had found out my wife was cheating on me. They said I knew who the guy was but hadn't done anything yet. Then they started saying stuff like, man, if he decides to go after him, they won't find the guy's body for 50 years, and like that, just laughing and watching him sweat without letting on they knew it was him. I don't think my ex ever told him I knew about the affair, so that was probably a nice surprise for him. I'm sure I'll run into him eventually. Not sure how that will play out, but I'm not going out and seeking it. So basically, 16 months after D-Day, I've got a new girlfriend, a great relationship with my kids, a happy work life, I'm in great shape physically, and I'm doing great financially. I don't think it could have worked out for me any better. So if anyone going through it now needs some advice, here's what I would say. Stay positive. Don't let the resentment and negative feelings take control of your life. If you don't have a lot of money, try to sit down and work out a deal with your spouse without lawyers. This way you actually have some money to walk away with. If you have kids, try to maintain an amicable relationship with your spouse. I know how hard this is, but you're doing it for your children, not for them. Exercise is a great way to de-stress. Find a gym and start going. It'll help your mental health as well as your physical health. Remember that every situation is different. Find the path that works best for your situation. When they are gone, remember they are gone. They aren't coming back to you, and if they do, it's probably not for your best interest. The trust is gone forever, so move on and find someone that deserves you. If you're not the kind of person that meets people in the world often, try a dating app like Bumble. They work. I know this update isn't as satisfying as some in this sub would like, but it really worked out well for me and my kids, and that's all I really wanted. So yay. I'm a lot happier now than I was after that first post, and I think that's the goal of this sub in the end. So thanks for all the kind words and support. It helped a lot. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My boyfriend's young. Flirty professor keeps inviting herself on our dates and trips. Should I be worried? My BF, 24, male, became friends with his former professor, 25, female sometime last year. I don't know what to make of it. They seem to be friendly and talk consistently every week, and from what he tells me, it's usually very surface level. Sometime last year, after the course ended, my BF, his professor, and some of his male classmates went somewhere to eat together. My BF brought up that he was going to be attending an event, a plastic modeling show, and his professor showed interest and invited herself to the event and asked if she could stay at his Airbnb with his friends. My BF and his friends were all okay with it. I unfortunately couldn't attend the event, but from what my BF told me, he and a few of his friends met up at their Airbnb that same day. His professor comes to my BF's Airbnb and tagged a few of her girlfriends along. I believe they all stayed in the same place. The next day, they go to the event, went to a bar afterwards, and got drinks. A lot of them, except my BF, got pretty drunk, and my BF took the liberty of being the designated driver for his professor and her friends. His professor won some model kit from the event and even in her drunken state asked my BF if he could stay up with her to work on the kit together. From what my BF tells me, nothing else happened that night. After the event, Everyone from that group created a group chat, and they continue to plan and talk about future events together. Since then, my BF and his friends had met up with his professor and got to meet his professor's fiancée at an anime convention, and it sounded like they all got along well. His professor continues to express interest in other events, and it sounds like she may be attending another event with my BF and his friends in the near future. I trust my boyfriend and don't think he is hiding anything from me. Honestly speaking, I think it's hard for me to understand their friendship as it is his professor. I've had a conversation with him on this, and he's let me know that I have nothing to worry about. I would like to hear others' opinions and see what y'all think of this friendship. Is this something I need to be concerned about, or is it really nothing? Thank you. Edit. The professor was my BF's former professor. She is classified as an adjunct faculty and works as an accountant as her full-time job, which explains why she is a young professor. My BF has not graduated college yet and is still a student at his university. Update. My boyfriend and I had a more heart-to-heart talk regarding his teacher, and he recognizes that it crossed some of my boundaries. He believes that she may be behaving the way she does because when she hangs out with her fiancé's friends, she gets bored with them and may possibly be seeking attention from other people. Several weeks later, my boyfriend had a conversation with his college instructor regarding their friendship and told her how I didn't feel comfortable with their friendship and how he thinks they should keep communication at a minimum. She brought up how she understands because her fiancé also had an issue with how she chose to share an Airbnb with my BF. She mentions to my boyfriend that she sees him as a brother and that's why she feels really comfortable with him, but that she will try to respect my boyfriend's wishes of keeping conversations at a minimum. Well, even after that talk, she continues to still message my boyfriend weekly on random life updates, and because she is also part of my BF's chat in Discord, one of his friends invited her to attend another plastic modeling show. It occurred recently, and dinner, since she accepted the invitations, I chose to attend as well so that I could personally meet her. The dinner occurred first, and it was very uncomfortable because she practically ignored me the entire night. When she joined us at the table, she greeted my BF but didn't say anything to me. Even my BF noticed and got annoyed but then introduced us. She got increasingly drunk throughout the night and was saying random stuff about my BF to his friends, like, he could have been the best student in my class, but it's because he missed some assignments, and BF's name gave me a 5-star review on Rate My Professor. She ended up not going to the show, but my BF had a chat with his guys, and they told him that they want to respect my feelings too and make it a guys' night next time. I would like to hear others' opinions and see if you also think she is acting suspicious. Now on to the next story. Story 4. I caught my GF doing this with her app at a friend's wedding, so I exposed her, and now she's a wreck. My wife, 32, female, has always been my biggest supporter, especially when it comes to my DJing career. It's actually how we first met back in 2011 at a school event where I was starting out as a DJ in our town. The moment we started talking, we just clicked. We had so much in common, from our interests to our taste in music and favorite bands. At first, we decided to hang out as friends, but before long, we knew there was something more between us, and we started dating. Fast forward to 2013. We got engaged, and to celebrate, we took a trip together. We often reminisce about that trip where we listened to the entire Third Eye Blind catalog and sang along to all the songs. That year, we tied the knot and got married. Throughout our marriage, we developed this special tradition of trying to see our favorite band, Third Eye Blind, as often as possible. We made it a point to attend their concerts whenever they were on tour, and over the course of our 9-year marriage, we managed to catch them 9 times. It's been a fantastic journey filled with shared passions and great memories. Last night was supposed to be our 10th time seeing our favorite band. Can you believe it? We've been married for 10 years as well, and our anniversary is just around the corner in November. I had this amazing plan all set up for us. We'd go to the concert, stay at a nice hotel, and have a super romantic night together. And to top it all off, I got her a beautiful custom necklace made of gold with her name on it and her favorite lyrics engraved. I've been saving my entire salary for the past year just for this special gift, and I knew she would absolutely adore it. So on Friday night, the big day arrived, the day of the concert and our 10th anniversary celebration. When I got back home from work, I found my wife getting ready, looking as stunning as ever. I was all excited to give her the necklace and the concert tickets, so I went to my work laptop bag where I kept them, but then I noticed her phone on the table, and it had a notification buzzing. I couldn't resist my curiosity, so I tapped on the message. The text was from an unknown number, and it said, "How was today? I miss you so much. When can I see you again?" Man, it was such a shock for me, and my chest felt this weird heavy feeling when I saw that message on her phone. I couldn't help but scroll through their chat, and with every message I read, I got more and more disgusted with my wife. I mean, how could she do this to me? That was the only question running through my mind. The worst part was when she mentioned him needing condoms, and he replied to it with a picture of a pack of condoms in his car with the caption saying, "Already." It made me wonder if they even used any, but honestly, at this point, does it even matter? I didn't want to stay in the house a minute longer, so I grabbed my work bag, which had the concert tickets and the necklace I got her. I needed some space to process what was happening before I confronted her about it, so I hopped in the car and drove straight to the concert. I had spent a lot of money on those VIP tickets, so I figured I might as well make use of them. About 15 minutes into the drive, my wife called me, sounding surprised and annoyed at the same time. She asked where I was and what I was up to. Can you believe the audacity she had to ask me that? I was so angry that I told her I was on my way to the show, since she already had her fun, private show in the afternoon. There was silence on the other end, but I was too furious to carry on the conversation, so I just hung up. I was still in shock and couldn't believe what I had just discovered. At that moment, I was feeling numb, like I didn't know what to feel. Then she called me back, and it was like she was going through the motions. She started crying and tried to explain that they were just friends, and that nothing actually happened between them. But I couldn't take her excuses anymore. I felt like she never respected me or truly loved me the way I loved her. It all just spilled out, and I reminded her how I went all out to get her an expensive gift for our special anniversary. She got quiet and then suddenly acted like she was crying and asked what I got her. It felt like she was trying to manipulate me into feeling sorry for her and forgiving her. I was done with her lies and drama at that point. I told her to leave me alone and be with whoever she wanted to be with, but she insisted that we talk about it like adults and wanted me to come back, as if I'm the childish one for having stormed out. I saw through her plan, though. She was going to act innocent, make me feel guilty, and then try to seduce me, and honestly, just the thought of it disgusted me. I never thought I'd feel that way about my wife, and the idea of being intimate with her. It was all just too much. So I made it to the concert, and when I handed my ticket to the guy at the entrance, he looked at me and said, "There's two," meaning he needed to scan the other ticket too. I must have been in a daze or something because I just stared at him blankly and replied, "Yes, there's two," and then walked inside. It was like I was in some weird trance or hypnotized or something. Anyway, the show was incredible. I had a blast and really enjoyed myself. I even ended up making friends with some cool people in my row, and we all had a great time together, singing along to the songs. But I have to admit, some of the lyrics hit me differently that night, considering everything that was going on. During the concert, I felt so alive. I danced and screamed along with the crowd, and it was like a release for all the frustrations I was feeling. The loud rock music drowned out everything else, and it was just what I needed. When the concert ended, it was still pretty early, and I thought about sitting at the bar and having a drink, but the idea of talking to someone outside of the concert context just felt overwhelming. My mind kept going back to those texts and what I had discovered, and it was hard to shake off those thoughts. So after the concert, I headed to the hotel where I had made a reservation for my wife and me, but there I was, sleeping alone. When I woke up, my inbox was flooded with about 30 emails from her. It seemed like she had been up all night going through a roller coaster of emotions. Guilt, shame, and even anger. Surprisingly, some of her emails were filled with anger towards me for going through her phone. It was surreal to read those, as if I was the one in the wrong. She pleaded and bargained, leaving voice messages expressing her surprise that I had gotten her an expensive gift, which she found out by going through my emails. She begged me to answer her calls and wanted us to talk things out, hoping we could salvage our anniversary night and make it memorable. That night turned out to be unforgettable, but not in the way I had imagined it. It was when I finally saw the true colors of the person I had been married to, even though it took me nearly 12 years to fully realize it. The worst part was when she sent me all the cards I had written for her over the years. Anniversary cards, birthday cards, Christmas cards. I always poured my heart into those cards, expressing my deep love for her. It was something I had never done for anyone else before, and she used to write such heartfelt cards for me too, although she hadn't done so in years. I think her intention was for me to read those cards and have my heart soften, to remember how much I loved her. She hoped that I would come to my senses, reach out to her, and that we would talk things through, leading to forgiveness and a better future together. But instead, reading those cards made me realize just how little she loved me. It was a painful realization that night. As heartbreaking as it was, it opened my eyes to who my wife truly was, despite us being together for nearly 12 years. I realized that I needed to come to terms with the situation and decide what was best for both of us moving forward. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Took the drunk driver to court who hit me, but my lawyer boyfriend is defending him now. He is begging me to take him back after losing the case. Okay, so around 10 days ago, I, 25F, got into a car accident which absolutely wasn't my fault. My car was parked outside a friend's house, and I was sitting in the car waiting for her to show up. I was scrolling on my phone when all of a sudden another car crashed into mine from the back. The impact was really bad, and unfortunately, I ended up spraining my neck. I suffered from a severe spinal injury because I'd fallen off a ladder around 5 years ago, and this collision just aggravated that. The car crash led to a ligament in my neck being torn, and I've been in severe pain since then. I couldn't get out of my car to confront the driver of the other car, but as soon as my friend heard the crash, she came running out of the house and immediately called 911. When they arrived, we were both rushed to the hospital, and while nothing happened to the other guy, I ended up in a cervical collar. I wasn't too worried about my car since insurance would take care of that, but I did press charges against the guy who hit me. I didn't know what he was on since my car was literally parked in the street. We were on a wide enough street to drive by without hitting anyone, so it was insane that he crashed right into my car. Because he'd been drinking. I knew that because when he visited me in the hospital room, he was still reeking of alcohol but had tried to cover up the smell with a disgusting mix of perfume and disinfectant. I told the police that I wanted to press charges that day itself, but the guy who hit me, I'll refer to him as Chris for the sake of clarity, was very well connected, and the DA refused to acknowledge it as anything other than an accident. They even tried to gaslight me into believing that I was parked in a really weird spot. Chris had just swerved to avoid hitting a cat and had unfortunately ended up crashing into my car. I later found out that Chris was related to a really wealthy businessman, probably his nephew or something. I'm not sure. But anyway, that was how he managed to dodge the law. The car would be taken care of by my insurance company since I'd been in an accident, and I had all the proof and the police report said so as well, but I wasn't satisfied with just that. This Chris guy had literally hit my car head-on and was most definitely drunk, so he owed me a lot more than a week-long apology. There was also the issue of my healthcare because I had to bear the entire cost of my visit, and trust me, it was an insane amount since I had to get some tests done, an x-ray. I had to pay for the collar plus medicines, and all of it came up to almost $2,000. My insurance wouldn't cover all of it since I didn't have to stay overnight, and neither did I have to spend 24 hours. I run my own small-scale bakery business, and I can afford to live nicely. I have a small apartment of my own, and I can afford rent, gas, electricity, water, and all the other essentials, and I can even afford to splurge once in a while, but the hospital bill was huge, and I absolutely cannot just afford to drop that sort of money without disrupting my budget for the month, and I can't exactly skimp on anything else either. I still have to pay my bills and buy groceries and stuff that I need for my bakery business. And also, it was just so infuriating that some drunk guy could drink and drive, hit my car, send me to the hospital, and put me in excruciating pain and discomfort for the next God knows how many days and still just get away with it because of his connections. So I decided to sue the guy, and since my boyfriend, 29M, is a lawyer himself, my first choice was obviously him. That was a week ago, and we were having dinner when I told him about this. He got really uncomfortable when I told him about it and said that I should just drop it because it wouldn't be worth it to go after someone like Chris. I was taken aback by his attitude towards this since he could see that I was in a lot of pain and knew that I'd had to spend a bomb on healthcare, and yet he wanted me to drop it. We got into a fight over it, and he told me that he was too busy to represent me in such a petty fight, which was just so hurtful and made me rethink my entire relationship with him. We've been together for only 6 months, but I've known him for a year and a half, and he's been my go-to person ever since we became friends. The way he behaved just didn't sit right with me, and even though I knew that he was well respected in his field, I'd never imagined that he'd make me feel so small. I was acutely aware of the difference in our income and position in society, but I tried my best not to feel inferior. Maybe being a baker wouldn't make me as wealthy as he aspired to be, and maybe it wasn't an important career, but I did what I loved. I had fun doing what I do, and most importantly, I didn't rely on my boyfriend for money, so he had no right to make me feel that way. I didn't speak to him after that because I was very hurt about what he'd said. So I approached a cousin of mine who just started out, and she was more than happy to help me file the petition against Chris. I didn't tell my boyfriend about any of this, and it made up my mind to break up with him by the end of this week because he'd been really disrespectful, and I wasn't going to stand for it. But before I could call him, he decided to contact me yesterday. Chris was notified of the litigation process, and apparently, he'd hired my boyfriend to represent him in court, and he called me to warn me. He said that I needed to be careful because I'd be up against a really good lawyer, so my case needed to be airtight. He even suggested that I stop the proceedings and settle out of court because if I did go ahead, I was destined to lose. I knew that this was just the other guy's way to play mind games with me and intimidate me into backing off, but it wasn't going to work. I did feel bad about the way my boyfriend was acting, though. For some reason, he thought this was funny. I was already hurting, not just physically but also emotionally, and that was enough to send me over the edge, so I told him it was a good thing that we were already in court because now I could dump him since it had turned into a conflict of interest for me. After saying that, I disconnected the call, and since I still wasn't feeling satisfied with what I'd done, I decided to call his sister up and tell her what he was up to. His sister and I are really close and have been for 5 years. We became friends in college, and after we graduated, she invited me to her house for Thanksgiving dinner one year, which is where I met my boyfriend. I told her all about what he'd done and the fact that he was about to defend a guy who's obviously been drinking and driving, knowing that his family would be all up in arms about it. They're all really into activism and are very strict about the causes they support, but my boyfriend doesn't really care. It always felt strange to me, but now I guess he's just not a very socially conscious guy, and I just wasted half a year of my life trying to be with someone who had no principles and would do anything for money. He's constantly at odds with his father, who's also an ex-lawyer but is active in the circuit and usually finds out what cases his son chooses through someone who knows someone. So my boyfriend can't exactly hide anything from his family either. His sister was also not on board with what he'd done and the way he was behaving, so she promised me that she'd look into it and make sure he apologized to me. She couldn't guarantee that he'd back out of the case, but she said that she'd make sure he was sorry for making me feel small and being arrogant. She told me that he had already not been on good terms with his family for a while now, and what I told her had just made it very clear to her that her brother was going down the wrong path, and she couldn't take it. She thanked me for telling her and even advised me to dump him because he lost sight of what was important because of how ambitious and greedy he'd become. She even seemed pleased when I told her that I'd already left him, so that was how bad his relationship with his family was. Now I can't say I'm surprised since his family has always tried to be ethical, and his sister would constantly complain about the kind of people my boyfriend would choose to defend in court just because it paid well. I didn't like it much either, but I tried to stay out of it as much as I could since I didn't think it was my place to talk about how he worked and what clients he represented. He didn't talk about my work, so I didn't want to overstep my boundaries either, but this time I was involved directly, and he'd insulted me far too much for me to keep it quiet anymore. Within half an hour of my phone call, my boyfriend started calling me relentlessly. I decided to answer him after almost 10 missed calls, and he immediately started apologizing for the way he behaved and said that he'd just been joking earlier. I told him that I wasn't going to forgive him because he'd really hurt me, and I also told him that now his family was also aware of the situation, so he could expect a call from his parents soon enough as well. That's when things got bad, and now I think I might have made a mistake getting his family involved. He told me that I had no right to speak to his family, no matter how hurt I'd been. They'd already been hounding him to work for better clients, and now it was about to get worse just because of what I'd done. He was really unhappy about my decision to speak to his sister and said that he was relieved that we were no longer together. So now he wouldn't have to hold back in court and would make sure I didn't get anything out of this. I hung up after that and blocked him, but I've been really worried ever since. We're supposed to appear in the local small claims court, and I know it's not a very high-profile case. I've only filed a claim of $5,000 since I think I'm owed it because I'll definitely have to visit the hospital in the future as well for my neck. After this, I'm still worried that I might lose because my boyfriend is a good lawyer from what I know and rarely ever loses. Also, I think I might have overstepped my bounds and really shouldn't have told his sister, like a tattletale. He is a 30-year-old man after all, fully capable of making his own decisions, so maybe he's right, and I really was out of line. Now I'm considering just cutting my losses and apologizing to him. I don't know if that'll solve anything, but I can at least try. So should I do it? I'm debating whether I did wrong for dumping my boyfriend and telling his family that he's representing someone who is certainly guilty. Update 1. Hey, so I decided not to apologize to my boyfriend because I was not wrong. I read all the messages here. I went through the comments on my post. I talked to my parents and a few friends of mine, and I really thought about this long and hard. There's just no conceivable way that I'm in the wrong here. He messed with me, so I messed with him tit for tat. And if he wasn't in the wrong here, he wouldn't be getting so defensive either. So it's clear who has a guilty conscience in this situation and is trying to hide it by talking a big game and being overconfident. He might be a skilled lawyer, but I have the truth on my side, and I have full faith in myself and my cousin. That's all I need anyway. So he can say whatever he wants, but it's not going to faze me. I also found out that this Chris guy actually went to high school with my boyfriend, and they have a couple of friends in common. I guess that explains how he seemed to know who I was talking about when I mentioned Chris earlier. His sister was actually the one who told me about this, and it all finally made sense. All of them went to the same high school, and she knew that Chris was an exceptionally spoiled and entitled brat who'd grow up to be nothing but a wastrel. He partied his way through life, and now in his late 20s, he was still struggling to find his footing at any job and was a high-functioning alcoholic. It just pissed me off to know that this guy still had a license and a nice car in spite of his alcoholism just because he was related to the right people and was rich enough to get away with whatever he wanted, while I still had my car in the repair workshop and had to wear a collar so that my neck would heal and would have to take painkillers every other day just to be able to work. It was so unfair already, and my boyfriend choosing to represent this idiot instead of me was the cherry on top. I guess some people really do think money comes over morals, but it's okay. That just tells me what kind of person he is. His sister also told me that they got into a huge fight over this with my now ex-boyfriend when his dad decided to confront him about what he was doing. He put his foot down and told him that he could either back out of this and choose not to defend this Chris guy or his family would sever ties with him, and that led to a lot of drama, but eventually my ex decided to step back and cut his parents off. Yeah, because he was getting paid a hefty amount to defend Chris, and there was no way he was letting that go. He wouldn't even choose his own family over money. So I'd been really damn stupid to think that he'd choose me over money. At least I know where I stand now, and so does his family. We're supposed to meet in court tomorrow, and I'm nervous, but I also know that I'm being honest here, and he's not, and that just strengthens my faith in myself. Also, the fact that even strangers on the internet are on my side on this one speaks volumes about who's right and who's wrong. Hopefully, the judge will also be able to see that and will be able to settle this. Update 2. So this is the night before the hearing, and my ex just sent me a message from a different number saying that there's still time and I can back off even now. He said that his client is willing to pay me the $2,000 plus some more and settle out of court. But I'm not okay with that. I want that guy to acknowledge that he screwed up royally and pay me no less than $5,000. I'm not even being greedy right now. I just think that that's what I'm owed because $2,000 is what I had to spend only on the day of the accident. There are more medical bills to cover because I'll have to get medicines, consultations, and physiotherapy to properly heal from this incident. I've been suffering from backaches almost daily, and it's affecting my work as well. This is why I'm not willing to settle for anything less than $5,000, and I'm sure that it's completely fair and reasonable. I don't even know what the fuss is all about, honestly. He's super rich, so why can't he just drop $5,000 for an accident that he caused? It just doesn't make any sense. It's not my concern anyway, so I just blocked the other number as well, and I'm going to try and fall asleep soon so that I don't have to entertain my ex's attempts to contact me and throw me off my game. This is really the last thing that I need right now, and I'm pretty sure that he's still trying to get into my head and mess with me because he thinks he's going to lose. I mean, that must be the case if he's so desperate all of a sudden. He knows he's going to lose and is trying to prevent that now. Update 3. Hey everyone, we finally had the hearing today, and it went better than I'd expected. We were the last ones to present our case, and my cousin was fab, but of course my boyfriend is more skilled and was able to get the judge to assign a second hearing. I won't get into the details because it's boring and irrelevant, and the more I think about it, the more frustrated I feel because there's still a chance that I might end up losing money fighting this. I'm grateful that my cousin isn't charging me much because we're family, but it's still money. I know being ethical and sticking to your principles is a great thing and blah blah blah, but right now I don't feel so good about the fact that there's going to be a second hearing. We'd managed to collect all the evidence we could find to strengthen our case, but unfortunately so did they, probably with their slimy and unethical ways. They definitely had to bribe some people. I know that for a fact. Anyway, I was in a foul mood when I was waiting for my cab to arrive, and then my ex decided to speak to me and make it worse. I wasn't even looking at him and was trying my best to ignore him, but I didn't have my AirPods with me, so I couldn't exactly ignore his voice. He told me that Chris's dad had decided to cut him off after the accident because that had been the last straw, and now he was totally on his own. He was down to the last few thousand in his account and really couldn't afford to pay me the amount that I was asking for, which is why he'd asked me to settle out of court and settle for way less than what I'd claimed. I pretended not to hear him, but he went on and on about how I needed to have a heart and that it was unlike me to be so greedy. After a while, I just snapped at him and told him that I did have a heart, but I preferred to save it for people who deserved it, and his friend Chris most certainly did not. Worst comes to worst, his parents would take him back and pay me the amount instead. I'm sure the parents who raised this man-child would make sure that their son didn't go to jail over something so petty. In any way, his uncle was rich enough to make things happen, which is how they got a second hearing to happen, but I didn't have the luxury to rely on other people to bail me out of trouble constantly. So neither was I being heartless and nor was I being greedy. I was just looking out for myself. And just because I wasn't constantly running after money like my ex didn't mean that I wasn't in need of it. He then stared at me and kept trying to come up with arguments against me but couldn't, so his mouth just kept opening and closing like a goldfish for a few seconds, and finally, after half a minute, my cab arrived and I left him standing there. I'm not entirely happy with how today went, but at least I got to chew my ex out, so that was a win for me. Now I just hope we can wrap this up by the next hearing. Update 4. Hi, so it's been 3 weeks, and yesterday I finally received the amount that was due, just as I predicted. Chris's parents stepped up at the very last minute and bailed him out yet again. But it doesn't matter because at least the verdict was in my favor. What was interesting is what happened after the judgment. I went home, and unlike the previous day, my ex didn't try to stop me and talk to me outside of court, and instead decided to wait until we got home. A few hours after I'd come home, he showed up at my door with a bouquet of roses and asked me out. He said that he was truly apologetic about everything that he'd said and done so far, and he always knew that he was going to lose, which is why he'd been such an egoistic idiot, but he'd realized that he was being stupid and now wanted me to give him a second chance. I did what anyone in my place would have done and slammed the door shut right in his face. He tried to talk to me, but I told him that I had no interest in entertaining him and his fake apology, so he could save his breath and just leave. The ego trip he'd been on before he lost such a petty case. Today was the real him, and I didn't want to wait around for him to get worse. He was unethical and cold, and I don't think that's what I'm looking for in a partner at all. In fact, I really don't think anyone is. So he needed to leave me alone now and regret his decisions on his own time instead of trying to argue with me, or else I would report him to the cops. He left without another word, and I'm hopeful that he won't come back or try to contact me later on. Now I told his sister all about it, and she supported my decision wholeheartedly. She told me that her parents were still not willing to speak to him, and neither had he apologized to them, which was nuts because his dad was also a well-respected lawyer in his prime and was better than him and had taught his son all that he knew. He's just an ungrateful ass, and I'm glad I finally took the blindfold off and saw him for what he truly is. Now I'm just going to do me, and hopefully, I'll be better soon, both physically and emotionally. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Found out from my daughter that my wife cheated on me with a guy she met at the grocery store, so I did this. My wife, 33, was an expert shopper. It helps that her grandmother and mother were very materialistic people. While keeping a budget, she would hunt for the perfect sale, which is why I, 37, didn't usually jump up to go with her because she could be out for 6 hours or more. She would go out once a week, every Saturday, leaving the house by 6 a.m. She'd go to Saturday's market, then go to the mall, eat lunch, and probably shop more. We were married for 8 years, and the whole time she was in the habit of doing this. She took our 5-year-old daughter with her sometimes. My wife was a consistent light in my life, and I didn't know she didn't deserve my trust. She started taking our daughter less and less often, leaving the house without waking her up or giving her the choice. I asked her why, and she said she could get back sooner without bringing her along because a lot of the time she would start to complain and get tired long before my wife was ready to come back home. I suppose it was a reasonable explanation, but my daughter and I were both bummed because she enjoyed those trips with her mom. Our daughter actually started asking her each time if she could go with her, and she'd say no each time. She'd do something else with her the next day or bring home something nice for her, but it wasn't the same. I let it go for a while, but eventually, I felt like I had to say something. I confronted her and told her she needed to take her with her that Saturday. She was not happy. I couldn't believe how inconvenient it was for her. She started to accept it and actually did follow through, but that Sunday she went out alone. Usually, we all had family time and practiced meditation. Our girl always turned it into a game of peeing without getting caught. When my wife got back, she was really happy, like everything was fine. Then my daughter asked a question that led to the discovery of what was really going on. She asked her mom, "Has she met the man with the puppet today?" My wife forced a laugh and said, "No, he's only at the market on Saturdays." I asked who this was, and before my wife responded, our daughter said, "He was the man Mommy kissed yesterday." I looked at her with wide eyes. She knew we had to talk. I excused myself to another room and waited for my wife to set up our daughter with toys before joining me. I quizzed her until she was blue in the face, but she couldn't convince me her lies were true. She tried telling me our daughter was talking about something else, but I knew her speaking capabilities were pretty accurate. She even looked at my wife like she was going to be in trouble with Daddy. She knew it was wrong, and she wanted me to know. So my wife eventually came clean. She said he was a nice guy that she got close to over the years she'd been going to the market. He liked her more than friends, and she didn't want to break his heart, so she started giving him kisses. I didn't think there was any way she could believe this was okay. I told her she betrayed my trust by doing this, even by being friends with this guy without telling me. I'd like to know who she's involved with, even if only for safety's sake. Now I was suddenly aware of a guy she'd gotten to know for years, introduced to our daughter, and kissed. I looked her straight in the eye and asked her if she ever slept with this man or anyone else. She blushed hard, looked away, and told me no. How much more obvious it could have been that she was lying to me. I stared at her, but she only tried asking if we could leave the room now, and I said no. I told her to tell me the truth because her whole body looked like she was lying. Her mouth got really dry, and she started to dry heave. She excused herself to our bathroom and threw up. I told her she needed to get it off her shoulders so she could feel better, but she pretended not to have anything to say. I told her I didn't want her to go to Saturday's market anymore, and she lost it. She said this was one of her greatest joys in life, and I told her that she spoiled it for herself because she started kissing an older guy. I wondered if she said older to try to get me to let it go, like I'd picture an old, lonely man. I wasn't a fool, so for a whole month she didn't go anywhere over the weekend. Finally, she made an excuse to go out, but she took our daughter with her to help convince me she wasn't up to no good. They'd come home with groceries or other stuff that proved they weren't at Saturday's market. I hated that this had become an issue between us. Now, every time she left, I wondered if she was seeing Mr. Kisser. On the first day she didn't offer to take our daughter, I followed her. She didn't go to Saturday's market, but she did go to someone's house. Before I got confirmation, I knew this was App's house. I could feel it in my bones. It was like my wife's energy and emotion were contagious to me. I knocked on his front door after my wife went inside. App answered it, and I asked him why I saw my wife just come inside. My heart was pounding out of my chest as I pictured this guy meeting my daughter. He looked young and confused, but before he could ask me anything, I asked if he was the puppet guy at Saturday's market. He covered his mouth for a second and asked me if I was her husband. I said yes and yelled my wife's name. She came out and he told her to leave. Then he told me she introduced herself as a widower. I felt like my heart stopped beating permanently, and I was only surviving off air in my still blood. My wife came rushing out like she had a right to be mad, brushing past me. I followed her. She frantically tried to get in her car, but I grabbed her keys from her and ran to my car, locking the doors. She watched helplessly as I took her house key off before giving them back. She told her parents I kicked her out for no reason, so they let her stay with them and arranged to have a truck come get her stuff. They came over to visit with our daughter and asked me what really happened. I told them the truth, and they must have made my wife's life at their house a living hell because every day she told me she hated me for telling them what happened. She moved out in just 5 weeks, opting to take turns sleeping on different friends' couches rather than stay under their roof. The divorce went in my favor, and my wife is at least partially involved with our daughter. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My sister-in-law hated me for years. Then, she had a tragic miscarriage, so we welcomed her back. But she started telling my child that she was his real mom. My husband, David, and I have been married for the past 8 years. We have a son together called Tom. He is currently 4 years old and is a very playful kid with a hyperactive imagination. Tom has always been close to me and is a bit of a mama's boy, which I don't mind at all, since I know as soon as he turns into a teenager, he will have his own interests and may not want to spend as much time with me anymore. David and I are excellent partners, and over the years we have perfected our routine of taking care of the house, Tom, as well as fulfilling careers of our own. Honestly, this harmony between us has been possible because I thought I had a very respectful and communicative husband like David. So you would imagine that I have nothing to complain about on Reddit, right? Well, I am making this post today about my husband's sister, Kathy. Now, I don't want to start off by showing my bias towards her, but let's just say that Kathy is extremely difficult to get along with. She has always been ice cold towards me right from the start, and this behavior has remained the same even though I and David have now been married for a very long time. I remember during the beginning of our dating phase, David told me that his parents would easily approve of me, but that his sister, Kathy, would definitely grill me because she has always been very protective of him. Well, as it turns out, he was right. The first night we met with her, she asked me a bunch of questions about my family, my childhood, and about my siblings. No matter what I answered, she seemed unimpressed and had her nose up in the air the entire time. She would also randomly bring up David's exes in the middle of our conversation and compare them to me as if it were the most normal thing to do. At one point during dinner, she invited David to join her and her girlfriends for a girls' trip, telling him how he needed to clear his head before getting serious with someone. This statement really weirded me out, and I got visibly annoyed, which David noticed and told his sister to back off as politely as possible. Now, this is something that has sometimes annoyed me about my husband. Although he does stand up to his sister, he is not really strong about his boundaries because of his affection towards her. I guess this makes her assume she can keep pushing the matter, all because she is the older sister and, according to her, only she has the best interest of him. Since that first dinner date, I was convinced that Kathy and I did not like each other. It did hurt me a bit, but I wasn't going to go out of my way to convince someone to love and accept me if their mind was already made up. Despite this incident, I was always polite to her whenever we did meet next, but she never made it easy for me. One incident in particular that pops up in my mind immediately is David's grandparents' anniversary party. They had invited the entire family, and I was invited as David's +1, as we had been dating for 1 year by then. Throughout the party, his family members would come up to me to strike up a conversation, and I honestly loved how chill and friendly his family was. The one person who didn't speak a word to me or even greet me was Kathy. I noticed that and kept out of her way as much as possible. At one point, his grandparents asked everybody to gather around so we could all take a group picture. As we gathered together, Kathy loudly pointed me out and asked me to get out of the picture. David looked at her with his eyebrows raised as Kathy went on to say that maybe he would break up with me in the future and that she didn't want one of her brothers, bimbos, to be a part of this picture. My face got red with embarrassment as everyone looked uncomfortable as well. David tried to argue, but Kathy kept talking over him, saying how I was just a random stranger and I should not have even come to this function to begin with. I had heard enough and I felt utterly humiliated. David had attended many of my family functions, and none of my family members had ever treated David this way. I excused myself and walked back into the house so I could look for my car keys. I had no intention of spending a minute longer with that woman. David and his parents came rushing behind me trying to apologize. His mother tried to convince me to go back with them, but the moment had been ruined. I could hear David's grandparents chastising Kathy loudly, and I felt even more guilty for ruining everybody's day. I left immediately, and that evening I even contemplated breaking up with David, as I knew I could not handle someone like his sister. However, as it turns out, David came to my place with flowers and pastries to apologize. He told me how everyone had laid it on Kathy for being rude to me and that he had threatened to cut off things with her as well, which had apparently made her cry. He told me that he was getting fed up with his sister's antics and that he didn't want anything to do with her. We did talk a lot, but I felt reassured that he stood up for me. In the days that followed, David kept his word. We stopped meeting with Kathy altogether, and he stopped picking up her calls. She would sometimes show up at his house unannounced, so he changed all his locks and asked his parents to talk to her so she could respect his private space. His parents supported his decision, so Kathy had no choice but to accept the fact that her brother didn't want anything to do with her. We thought this would make her think and regret the way she treated me, but as it turns out, it had the opposite effect. She started calling me and texting me, and she would leave me threatening messages, blaming me for everything. The tip of the hat was when she showed up at my work one afternoon, demanding to meet me. Luckily, my manager intervened and kicked her out, but I was really shaken up. I told David that at this point, I had no choice but to break up with him, to get away from his crazy sister, file a case against her, and take her to court for harassing me. David started to cry, hearing this, pleading with me that there was no reason to break up and begged me to give him a chance so he could take care of it. He then convinced his parents to set up a meeting between him and Kathy at their place, where they ultimately had their last conversation. His parents knew about what she was doing to me and made it very clear to her that they wanted nothing to do with her anymore as well. David and his parents warned Kathy that the way she was behaving was borderline crazy, and if she continued, they would all support my decision to take her to court. I don't know how, but Kathy finally broke down and admitted that she needed help. She opened up to them about how she was just spiraling and didn't know how to stop. She also revealed to everyone that she had lost her job and had been unemployed for the last few months, which had added to her poor mental health. Luckily for her, David's parents stepped up and admitted her to a psychiatric hospital immediately, where she could be closely monitored. David reiterated his wish of not staying in touch with her, which Kathy finally learned to accept. She did send me an apology text, which, in my opinion, seemed a bit half-hearted, but for her sake, I hoped that she would heal. When David and I finally got married, we decided not to invite Kathy, even though she had eventually been discharged and seemed to be doing well in her life. I wanted nothing to do with her, and everybody respected my wish. She did send me flowers congratulating me on my happy day, which I very much appreciated. Right after we got married and returned from our honeymoon, Kathy announced that she was getting married. Everybody was surprised since no one even knew that she had been dating anyone at this point, but we were all pleased for her. At the same time, until we learned that she was dating a guy she had met during her time in the psychiatric hospital. Now, just to give you all the full context, this guy, James, was schizophrenic and an alcoholic who had violent tendencies, according to his doctors. Understandably, David and Kathy's parents were a bit worried when they found out. Kathy announced to everyone that her marriage would take place the next month, and she wanted only David to be there and not me. I kind of expected it, and it made me relieved that she had not invited me, as it saved me the time to come up with an excuse for not attending. However, my husband felt offended that his sister just invited him and not me, so he did not attend the wedding as well. Those who did end up attending their wedding later told us what a nightmare the event was. It turns out that Kathy and James were totally wasted during the ceremony and could not even properly repeat the words after the priest. During the reception, James kept drinking and got so blackout drunk that he started to rip open his shirt and pants while everyone just stared at him in horror. Being schizophrenic, James did not like the staring and immediately attacked a server at the event who was just an innocent bystander, screaming about how the server looked suspicious and was hiding something. James' family eventually calmed him down and convinced the server not to press any charges against James by paying him off. However, This incident understandably scarred everyone, and we all felt quite worried about Kathy's safety. If James could attack a random stranger, then what was the guarantee that he would not attack her? David and his parents did try to get Kathy to talk to her privately about her husband's strange behavior, but Kathy seemed convinced that she could change him and make him all right. No matter how much her parents tried to tell her about the red flags, she seemed convinced that James would never harm her in any way. I wish I could say that she was right, but as you can already expect, James treated her exactly like everybody warned her about. Over the years, David and his parents tried to stay in touch with Kathy, but James would knowingly cut off her contact with anybody and prevent her from talking to anyone. We could not file a case against him because Kathy refused to accept any help. On 2 occasions, we heard that police were called to their place because the neighbors could hear them arguing and getting physically violent with each other. Despite everything, Kathy never budged and seemed convinced that he was the one for her. For years ago, I got pregnant with Tom. Everyone was overjoyed with happiness. For my baby shower, I wanted Kathy to be a part of the celebration, so we sent her an invitation. We never got any reply back from her, which worried us, so David decided to drive to her place to check up on her. It turns out James had completely cut her off from any communication with us and had thrown away our invitation so she would not even find out. I don't know exactly what happened, but David understandably got pissed. So he and James exchanged a few heated words, which did not end up going anywhere because Kathy did not feel that what her husband had been doing was wrong in any way. In frustration, David left, and that was the last we knew anything about her. We never contacted her ever again, even when Tom was born. Her parents also stopped going above and beyond to convince her, and we all just prayed that she would be okay. These past few years after Tom was born have been utterly peaceful and full of love. David and I never had any major issues to begin with, and now we have both reached a wonderful understanding and rhythm in our marriage. Tom is a very curious kid and he keeps us busy with his antics. David's parents visit us every weekend so they can babysit for a few hours while David and I have our weekly date night. It gives us some time off while the grandparents spend quality time with Tom. Everything seemed to be going well until 8 months ago when Kathy showed up at our doorstep, all muddy and disheveled. Her feet looked dirty and she had no shoes on. We immediately let her in, and I rushed to bring her a blanket as she seemed to be shivering. We had not seen her for years at this point, so we did not know what to say. David kept stroking her hair and asking her if she was okay. Kathy looked numb and stared off into nothing in particular. Eventually, she revealed to us that she had just miscarried. We sat in shock as she continued to recount how she had gotten pregnant a month ago and thought James would be happy for her. In the beginning, he was, but over the weeks he got more and more suspicious that this baby was going to take her away from him and that she would not love him the same. They would fight a lot, and he would threaten to mix rat poison in her food to make her lose the child. Kathy told us that she woke up that day feeling uneasy, and when she went to the doctor, she found out that she had lost her child. She felt so sick and numb that she could not get into the car and drive back home, so she decided to just walk. Somehow, her brain led her up to our house, but I guess she must have at least walked 20 blocks or more barefoot. She did not remember why she had no shoes on. I felt so sorry for her and immediately gave her a hug. She took a moment to register the hug, but when she did, she hugged me back. We sat there for 5 whole minutes as Kathy slowly cried into my arms. We knew right then and there that this was her way of asking for help. David seemed ready to confront James directly, but I persuaded him to call the police and notify their parents, who would be better equipped to handle the situation. His parents were incredibly grateful to have their daughter back and assured her they would support her no matter what. When the police took her statement, they were as shocked as us by the multiple abuses that Kathy had endured in her marriage until that point and kept quiet. James was then immediately arrested, despite his protests and threats. He did keep denying until the very end that he had nothing to do with her miscarriage, but as it turns out, from Kathy's police report, she had been indeed poisoned by him, which led to the loss of her baby. Long story short, because of James' mental issues and his incompetency to stand trial, the judge sentenced him to a psychiatric facility for treatment indefinitely. This decision was obviously frustrating, but we were also grateful to have Kathy back safe and sound. I have to clarify that all my previous feelings of animosity towards her had disappeared at this point. As a woman, I felt bad for her, and I wanted nothing but to forget our past so we could keep moving forward. I wished nothing but for Kathy to heal after all this ordeal. She also seemed calm around me and was no longer mean. When we felt she was ready, we introduced Tom to her, as we thought it would help her recover faster. She got extremely close to Tom in a short time, which none of us minded really. I guess this should have been my first red flag. Over the weeks, she would find ways to spend more and more time with my son by showing up unexpectedly at our place without calling first. She was staying with her and David's parents, so she could easily just drive over. She would insist on giving Tom baths or reading him his bedtime stories, which at first seemed like a kind gesture. However, her increasing presence started to feel a bit weird. It reached a point where Kathy would come over almost every day unannounced and always find a reason to stay longer than necessary. She'd bring toys and gifts for Tom, always seeking to be involved in his daily routines. She would also weirdly comment about his clothes or about his hairstyle, telling me how Tom would look better this way or that way, which bothered me a bit. While I appreciated her efforts to bond with him, it began to feel like she was slowly getting back to her old ways of undermining me. However, this time, instead of her brother, it was about my son. My motherly instinct kicked in. I talked to David, who assured me that maybe I was just overthinking and that his sister was just trying to cope with her pain. He reminded me how she had just lost her child, which made me feel guilty, so I decided to just let her be. If taking care of my son made her feel happy for a few minutes, then what's the harm here, right? As the days went on, I tried my best to be accommodating with her constant presence in our house. She started to look after Tom every day when we were at work and would even take him to play at the park in the evening. Sometimes, when I would come back home, I would notice how my son did not show the same enthusiasm for me anymore as he always did. He never ran up to greet me anymore and would look at me curiously after Kathy would leave. I would try to talk to Tom about the day and if he had any troubles with Kathy around, but he would not participate much in the conversation. My son, who was always joyful around me, seemed sad and less enthusiastic. As his mother, I felt really worried about the change in my son's behavior, but whenever I tried to talk to my husband about it, he would gently tell me that I was just thinking too much about trivial things. David would try to assure me that it was all in my head and that Tom was just growing up. However, the nagging feeling inside my head kept bothering me, so I talked to one of my coworkers about it, who gave me the brilliant plan that I could buy nanny cams from Amazon and install them in my son's room and in our living room to keep an eye on Tom. This was an ingenious idea, and I bought 2 cams immediately. I never told David about this as I did not want him to dismiss my feelings yet again. Yesterday, I came back home, and after Tom went to bed, I decided to check the nanny cams I had set up. David was watching TV downstairs, so I sat in my study room to watch the video, which had audio as well. At first, it was just Kathy taking care of Tom and playing around with him. She seemed really good with children. However, imagine my surprise when I saw Kathy bring out a book from inside her purse, which was not something I had noticed before. Generally, we have age-appropriate books to read for our son in his room, but this book was different. She read the book to Tom before his nap time in the afternoon. As I listened to her reading the story, I realized the story was about adoption and how a mother sometimes gives up her child to another mother to be taken care of. As Kathy kept reading the story to my son, she would add in how this is why she had left Tom behind in my care all those years ago because she wasn't ready then. My eyes widened in horror as she went on to tell my child that no matter what happens, she will always remain his real mother, and that no one could love him more than her. She kissed his forehead and left him to take his nap. My hand shook in anger as I finally understood the crap she had been feeding my son for God knows how long, which had clearly made my son behave weirdly around me. This poor child must be feeling terribly confused and just did not know what to believe. I was ready to storm downstairs and ask my husband to never let his sister inside our place ever again. But something stopped me. Instead, I decided to take the day off so I could spend some alone time with my son and find out what exactly Kathy has been telling him to brainwash him. When I told Kathy today that she did not have to come over and babysit, she freaked out, insisting that she loves spending time with my son, but I firmly told her to back off and that I wanted a day with my child. David did ask me if I was feeling well, and I assured him that everything was okay, but that I just needed a break. Later, I took my son to his favorite park so we could play around the whole day. We had pizzas and spent the whole day laughing and having a good time before bringing up the conversation. I wanted my son to feel safe around me. When I did start asking him about what his aunt and he had been talking about, he got a bit quiet. I promised Tom that he was not in trouble in any way and that I just wanted him to know that he could talk to me about anything. This is when my son spilled the truth. He told me how Kathy had been trying to convince him for weeks that she was his real mother, even though he did not really believe it. She would also tell him how I would eventually leave him because only real mothers love their children. Because of her insistence, he felt scared of asking me about it in case I would really kick him out. He told me that he loved me and he did not want to go live with Kathy. Hearing those words, my heart broke for him as I stared at his tear-streaked face. He looked so small and vulnerable, a stark contrast to the joyful and playful boy I knew so well. I knelt down to his level, gently took his hands in mine, and assured him that everything was going to be okay. We would get through this together, no matter what. I hugged him tightly, feeling the weight of his fears and pain. I felt like a loser for having failed to protect my son from this psycho. I assured him that he had nothing to worry about and that me and David would take care of this. However, my son then informed me that David already knew about all this. I asked him what he meant, and he said, "I asked Daddy, and he knows about this, but he told me not to tell you anything." The blood drained from my face as I realized that my husband, despite finding out what his sister was up to, had chosen to protect her instead of our son. He already knew about everything. I could not let my son around these people anymore. I did not want my son to be confused and frightened about his own mother. I was his mother, and it was my job to protect him from this. Quickly drove home and packed our bags. I told my parents that I was coming over to their place and that if David asked, we would tell them that I missed them and wanted to spend time with them. Luckily for me, my parents are very supportive, so they did not even hesitate to say yes. As I am writing this, I already talked to my parents about everything, and they are as shocked as me about what Kathy has been telling my son. David did call me when he must have returned home to an empty house, but I tried to sound as normal as possible, telling him that I needed a break from our place and my work. He did sound curious, but I assured him that I would stay with my parents for just a few days. We seldom fight, so I guess he didn't think much about it, even though my behavior must have seemed strange to him. I am so conflicted right now. I have no idea what I should do. How should I be confronting this situation? I'd like advice for distancing my son and me from my husband's crazy sister. Update 1. Wow. I woke up to almost 600 plus comments under my post. I can't believe so many people even use Reddit and have come across my post. I used all fake names in my story, so hopefully none of David's family members find out that it is about him. Also, to those people who are dragging me in the comments for not talking to my husband about this first, I assure you that I would have definitely talked to my husband had my son not told me that he had tried to talk to David about this when he first found out. Call it my mother's instinct, but the fact that my husband knew for weeks about how differently my son had been behaving with me but would gaslight me continuously goes on to show that a confrontation with him would not have led to anything constructive. I also wanted to take my son immediately out of the situation, and he is now much safer with my parents. Here, no psycho can feed him lies, and that's all that matters. Kathy has tried to get in touch with me several times, sending me multiple messages insisting that she needs to meet my son and how much she misses him. I plan on putting an end to this once and for all at the upcoming family get-together at David's parents' place this coming weekend. This get-together has been planned for weeks in advance by me, as David's grandparents are visiting, and I thought we could all spend some quality time together. However, in light of recent events, I plan on using this opportunity to speak my truth and make sure that Kathy comes nowhere near my son ever again. Update 2. I am back with an update. I finally confronted David and, as planned, during their family get-together. I was so nervous before going, but I decided to take the nanny cam recording with me so I could have legitimate proof to show everyone. Without going into too much detail and just getting straight to the point, I did call out Kathy in front of everyone during lunch. She looked shaken up and tried to laugh it off as if it wasn't a big deal. Then, I showed her the nanny cam and told her how I had recorded what she had told my son. I watched the color drain from her face as I then sent the video to the family group chat so everyone could see what I was talking about. Her parents were horrified as they watched her trying to convince my son that she was his real mommy. After this, I confronted David and told him how he failed to protect our son. My husband looked really guilty but tried to justify himself, saying he didn't think much about it and thought this would help his sister get over her grief. He felt torn between supporting his sister's recovery and telling me about it, but ultimately he chose to keep quiet. I informed him that because of his actions, I did not trust him anymore and could not let my son around him or his family ever again. For the first time in a long time, I watched my husband break down in tears, but I did not budge on my decision. I informed him that I couldn't have my son grow up in a family where his dad refused to stand up for him just to protect his mentally ill sister. David and Kathy's parents and grandparents apologized to me and assured me that they would make sure that Kathy came nowhere near our son ever again. Kathy looked utterly humiliated but didn't even have the shame to apologize once. David kept justifying his actions, but I paid no heed. I left shortly after this confrontation, as my work here was done and I wanted nothing to do with either of them anymore. Update 3. I see some of you are confused with my decision, so I just wanted to clarify. Yes, I plan on divorcing my husband. I know many of you wanted me to give a second chance to my husband as this wasn't entirely his fault, and I do agree David is a good man. However, a good man doesn't automatically make him a good father. Just because he and I never had any issues doesn't mean he was a good father to Tom. He should have nipped this in the bud from the beginning when our son came to him with doubts instead of spending weeks trying to cover it up and gaslight me. Both me and my son can't trust him anymore. I welcomed Kathy back into my life with open arms after what she went through because, as a woman, I felt sorry for her, but in the end, she proved exactly why I never liked her in the first place. I understand the abuse Kathy went through was extremely traumatic for her, but that doesn't mean that our son should have to pay for it. She was a grown woman who clearly had mental issues to begin with, but we thought she had gotten better. However, what really surprised me was my husband's decision. The fact that he would choose her mental well-being over our son's. This proves why he should never be around Tom. He was always such a supportive husband, and I thought I could trust him, but since what happened with Kathy, he clearly wanted to protect her more than us. I promise that from now on, I will protect my son no matter what happens. I am confident I can get full custody of my son if I expose his family history during the custody battle. Now on to the next story. Story 8. I gave up college to raise my little sister after our parents passed away, but she secretly planned her wedding and called me, know your place, unwanted trash, when I said I was not invited. I 27F want to start this by saying I absolutely love my younger sister, Catherine. I have no idea what has happened in the last few days that has caused her to completely change her feelings towards me. You see, I've been raising and taking care of my younger sister, who is currently 24 years old, ever since our parents passed away. I was just 19 years old, and Catherine was 16 years old when our parents met with a car accident while driving back from church. We were heartbroken, to say the least, not just because we had lost them, but also because the last time we spoke to our parents we were all fighting. Our parents were extremely controlling since the time we were born. Being the eldest child, I was literally their scapegoat for everything. I was not allowed to wear certain colorful clothes or go out with open hair, as my mother felt that it would attract boys. She would tell me how I needed to act like a girl all the time and would teach me things like to cross my legs while sitting and to not drink water directly from a bottle. I know how ridiculous this sounds, but believe me, this is what my mother was like. She would strictly check my appearance every time I had to step out of the house and would smack my hand with a ruler if I was not abiding by her rules. I remember once at a school fair, I wanted to wear a skirt just like all my friends had decided. I knew my mother would say no, so I decided to sneak my skirt into my backpack so I could later change in the school washroom and take pictures with my friends. Well, it turns out it was a huge mistake. Someone's parents, who also belonged to the church, spotted the four of us wearing skirts and complained about it to our parents. Suffice it to say, my parents were furious. As punishment, my mother made me kneel down on the ground continuously for 4 hours until my knees were sore and I had to beg my mother for mercy. My dad did not allow me to have dinner that night as he felt I was being too much of a spoiled girl. He told me that I was not allowed to be friends with those girls and that he would take away my bedroom door if I continued talking to those girls. I remember crying a lot in bed that night and wishing I had better parents. As you can imagine, because of this incident, I was so traumatized that I decided to stop being friends with those girls. I didn't want any trouble. I was afraid of making new friends as I didn't want to get in trouble later. My parents were also extremely obsessed with my grades. My mother would wake me up every morning at 5 o'clock so I could study before going to school. She would sit and knit while I would try to memorize the chapters for the day. Sometimes she would quiz me from the book, and if I wasn't able to memorize, then she would slap me or threaten to not give me breakfast. This is why, all throughout my high school, I had perfect grades so my parents could then brag about it to their church friends. Things got even worse once Catherine was born. While I was treated poorly, my sister got the best from our parents. I don't know if it was because they were tired of monitoring me and cared less about her, or if they just liked torturing me specifically, but my parents were very different around Catherine. While I was beaten up for small things, they never raised a hand on her. At first, it became clearer. You see, my sister looks exactly like my mother. The same blonde hair, blue eyes, and thin lips. My mother would always point out her features and tell everyone how beautiful her second child was. On the other hand, my mother would judge my weight and monitor it during high school. When I started putting on a bit of weight because I was depressed and I had literally nobody to talk to, my mother would poke and pinch my belly to get a reaction out of me. She would tell me that I was too big and that when she was my age, she was the skinniest in her class, so I needed to lose weight too. Her words still haunt me to this day because I cannot imagine how my own mother could have talked to me that way. As a result, I was not allowed to eat certain food items after that, and she would cook my food without oil and salt in order for me to lose weight. The food tasted bland and was literally so bad. However, I could not even complain about it. However, Catherine had no such restrictions. Whenever anybody pointed out to my mother that I was intelligent and that I would go to great heights, she would find a way to bring the conversation to Catherine and would tell the person how her second child is so gorgeous and reminds her so much of herself on account of her beauty. This became a usual thing for her, and it made me feel really bad for my looks and weight as a child. Can you imagine how it feels to hear your parents constantly compliment one child just because they look similar to them? While I was made fun of for my weight, my mother would remind me every day that I needed to look presentable and beautiful if I ever wanted a husband in the future. Otherwise, I would remain an embarrassing spinster for life. When I was in 8th grade and my sister was in 5th grade, my mother started trying to convince Catherine to take part in a children's beauty contest. Now, Catherine has never been a confident child. Hence, she was understandably apprehensive about walking and talking in front of an audience. She tried to refuse, but Mother was adamant. She assured Catherine that it was going to be fun. Turns out that Catherine won the contest, and I think this was the day that changed all our lives, perhaps for the worse. After this, my mother became obsessed with Catherine and would force her to take part in multiple beauty contests in a year. My dad would support this idea as well because they were winning cash prizes, which he loved. Catherine would sometimes tell me how scary and uncomfortable she felt during these contests since there were a lot of grown men who would stand around the stage and ogle at them. Apparently, a few of those men would even approach our mother and encourage her to bring Catherine to various auditions, which my younger sister was not at all comfortable with. Clearly, this was all my mother's dreams, and she was trying to live vicariously through her daughter. I felt so bad for Catherine that I tried talking to my mother about it, but as usual, I was dismissed before I could even finish my point. My mother taunted me that I was just being jealous of my younger sister since I was not beautiful like her. One day, when I came back home from school, I found Catherine crying in our bedroom. Our dad was at work, and our mother was out for groceries. She looked terribly upset, which made me concerned, so I asked her if something had happened to her. This is when Catherine starts recounting how a man she had seen previously in one of her beauty contests had been apparently stalking her at school. I was shocked when I heard her recount how the man had tried to approach her through our school fence and told her that he had always wanted to talk to her. This was an extremely disturbing situation, and I told her that she needed to tell our parents immediately. However, Catherine started to cry and told me that she was scared to do so because no one would believe her. I promised her that I believed her and that I would hold her hand while she recounted what she told me to our parents. To no one's surprise, when we told our parents during dinner that night, my dad looked at us nonchalantly while my mother told Catherine that she should be happy that she had a new fan. Our parents refused to take her seriously and told Catherine that she must be overreacting. It was impossible to argue with them, and Catherine looked defeated because our parents refused to believe Catherine. I decided to take the situation into my own hands. The next day, I told Catherine's homeroom teacher about how this strange adult guy was trying to talk to my little sister. She was as concerned as us and assured me that she would talk to the principal, and they would investigate further. Turns out what Catherine said was true, so my principal decided to call our parents and alert them about this, so they could file a proper complaint with the police. However, our parents, instead of thanking the principal for telling them about this dangerous man, waited for us to come back home so they could shout at us. Mother told us how she was embarrassed that we had made a big deal about this and that people were calling them to inquire about it. Dad scolded us that because of what we did, people would now assume that they were not taking care of us enough. They shouted a lot at Catherine and told her how lucky she was to be this beautiful since she didn't have the brains to survive in this world. They refused to let us have dinner that night and sent us to bed hungry. I heard Catherine cry in hunger throughout the night, and I felt so bad for both of us. However, the next day, Catherine stopped talking about it and did not want to have any conversation regarding the man. She told me that our parents were right and that she should have never told me in the first place. She also blamed me for going to the teachers about it and spilling the beans since that further escalated the problem. Since this incident, Catherine stopped sharing a lot of things about her life with me. Although lucky for her, our teachers kept a sharp eye on her in case the man ever returned. She sort of blamed me for how things turned out with our parents. It is also important to note that my mother would constantly criticize me to my face and behind my back to Catherine, and I guess this made my younger sister respect me a lot less. She started to dislike me for being so different from her when previously we at least had each other to share our secrets with. After the incident, she kept to her side of the room and seldom talked to me. Catherine went on to win more and more awards and made my parents very happy. She would closely monitor her food intake to make sure she was not gaining weight and would judge me if I ever had a pizza or a burger. As you can imagine, we did not remain close. As I grew tired of her talking and behaving like our mother, she would even taunt me just like our mother to lose weight, even though I was never overweight to begin with. But in their minds, they expected women to look a certain way and hated me for looking different. When I started wearing glasses, she would sometimes tease me about how embarrassing it was for her to have an older sister who looked like me and that her classmates would tease her about it. As much as I felt bad for myself, I felt bad for her too, for turning into our mother. When I graduated high school, I could not wait to leave my house and finally be free at college. But it turns out my parents did not want me to pursue higher education. They started to tell me how they knew a nice church guy who was looking to get married and that they had discussed and felt I would be perfect for him. Just out of curiosity, I asked them about who it was, and it turned out to be a 32-year-old guy they knew from church. I almost puked when I found out, and I could not believe the audacity my parents had to even think about this. My mother tried to convince me that being 18 was the best age for me to get married, and that I may not get such a good guy ever again. I vehemently refused and started applying to colleges so I could get out of the hellhole as soon as possible. I also took up a part-time job so I could earn some money in the meantime. When my dad realized that I was earning money, he started to insist that I needed to start paying him money for my groceries and bills as he didn't want to house a freeloader like me. I had no choice but to agree. Weeks and months passed by, and I was not getting any reply back from college, which worried me. I knew I was an excellent student, so there was no reason why a college would not select me, but even if they didn't, I would at least receive a rejection letter. One morning when I woke up early, I found my mother sneaking mail from our mailbox into her closet. My suspicions were up, and as much as I wanted to confront her about it right then and there, I knew she would not give me a straight answer, so I waited for her to get out of the house for errands. Later, when she left, I checked her closet, and this is how I found out that my mother had been hiding letters from my college for the past few months. I opened the letters to discover that I had been accepted into 2 universities, which almost made me cry tears of joy. One of these universities was offering me a full scholarship as long as I could maintain excellent grades. I immediately called back the college number so I could accept their offer and agreed to send all my documents that day. For the first time in a long while, I breathed a sigh of relief as I realized that I was finally getting out of this house. I knew there was no reason to confront my mother about her hiding my letters, as she would deny it and come up with an excuse. Hence, I kept my mouth shut until it was time for me to move away to college. Unfortunately, my mother found out that the letters in her closet were missing and immediately confronted me about it. She didn't even try to deny it, as she directly asked me if I had found the letters, and I replied yes. She then started to shout at me for going through her things and told me that I needed to drop this idea of going to college, as this is where girls go to get pregnant. I laughed hearing how ridiculous she sounded, as she then continued telling me that I needed to find a guy and settle down, as nothing is more important for a woman than becoming a mother. I told her firmly that I had already been accepted into college with a full scholarship, so whether I liked it or not, I would be moving. She was furious that I was trying to rebel against her. Later, when Dad came back home, she complained to him about me, telling him how I was trying to sneak off to college behind their backs. He joined my mother to shout at me and demanded that I call back my university and reject their offer. I refused, so then he told me that I needed to empty my bank account and pay him every penny I had saved up in the account to pay him back for taking care of an ungrateful child like me all these years. I told them that there was no way that I would give them any more of my money, and that I had worked so hard to save up for college so I could survive on my own. This infuriated my dad, and he asked me to get out of his house. Now, these are words that no child would like to hear from their parents, but that was the reality for me. At the age of 18, I was kicked out onto the streets. Throughout our fight, Catherine refused to speak up for me or offer me any help. I knew she could not do much, but I still thought that as my sister, she would have my back. But she clearly didn't. As a homeless person, I decided to reach out to my pastor for help. He was surprised to hear that my parents had thrown me out and immediately helped me get in touch with a local shelter. The shelter provided me with a temporary place to stay and connected me with resources to help me out. Despite how tough this was, I was still happy because I knew that this was just a temporary thing until I could go away to college. I continued to work and save as much money as I could. Throughout this time, my situation did not go unnoticed, and many people from our community reached out to our parents to shame them. My pastor gave them a stern talk about how terrible they were as parents. I guess this is why my parents must have started to feel guilty, because they tried to get in touch with me and asked me to come back home. Dad told me that I would have to pay a small rent fee to him, but otherwise he was fine with me moving back home with him. I refused and told him that I would rather sleep in the shelter or on the streets than ever share a roof with him and mother. I stuck to my words, and in a few months when I finally went away to college, I knew that our relationship was completely done. This is why I had not talked to my parents in a year, and Catherine didn't have a phone of her own, as our parents refused to get her one, so I had no way to stay in touch with her. One night, I woke up to several calls from an unknown number, and when I picked up, a nurse told me that our parents were in the hospital and I needed to come down immediately. I asked them if Catherine was okay, and they told me that she wasn't in the car but that she was badly shaken up. I had to take a bus to go back home, and it took me a few hours to reach the hospital. I guess Catherine was alone during this time, because the moment she saw me, she screamed at me about being late and how selfish I was to not even be by our parents' side as they were dying. I tried to tell her how my college was quite far away and it's not like I could just fly here, but she wasn't ready to listen. Later, when we talked to the doctors, they told us that our parents were in critical condition and there was a high chance they might not recover. Hearing this, Catherine broke down crying while I held her and tried to be strong. I know I didn't have the best relationship with my parents, but I still didn't want them to die. Catherine was clearly a mess, and I did not know how to handle the situation alone. A few days later, our parents passed away in the ICU. All our parents' friends helped us organize the funeral and made sure to support us during this difficult time. After the funeral, our dad's lawyer informed us that he had named Catherine to be the sole inheritor of the house and their bank account. I was not surprised by this, because by then I already knew who the favorite child was. Catherine didn't even blink or question why our parents had left her everything. However, since Catherine was just 16 years old at that time, she could not stay on her own. This was a huge problem, and she got scared that she might end up in an orphanage. We didn't have a lot of close relatives who were ready to take in Catherine, so I decided to step up. This is why I had to drop out of college in order to take care of my minor sister. Looking back, I was a fool to do so, but at that point, as an older sibling, I had no choice. I could not just think about myself. I needed to think about Catherine also. While she continued to study high school, I decided to get a job so I could earn my own money. Not a lot of companies like to hire an adult without a degree, but lucky for me, some of the people in my community helped me out in getting a job as a secretary. In the beginning, I wasn't earning well, but over the years my pay has increased significantly. During that time, I spent all my days and nights taking care of my little sister and making sure that she had everything. While she could withdraw some money from our parents' account during an emergency, she still didn't have full access as she was a minor. So whenever she was short of money for school or extra expenses, I bore them without any complaints. After graduating high school, I encouraged Catherine to apply to universities, expecting that she could get a degree unlike me at least. However, all my dreams were shattered when Catherine informed me a few months ago that she had been secretly dating a guy for the past couple of years, and they had decided to get married. I was shocked, to say the least, because I had no idea that my sister, who always looked so innocent, even had a boyfriend to begin with. I was also confused about why she had kept it hidden from me after our parents had passed away. But when I questioned her about it, she told me that she didn't think it was that much of a big deal. She then went on to say, without missing a beat, how she would love for me to organize her wedding since I had such good tastes. I was surprised that she wanted me to be involved since she never liked the way I dressed or my hairstyle. However, I thought maybe my sister had grown up, and this was a chance for us to bond throughout the wedding planning. Whenever I would tell Catherine that I wanted to meet the guy, she would come up with an excuse about why I couldn't see him. One time, I put my foot down and demanded that I needed to meet the guy she was about to marry, so she let me talk to him on the phone. He sounded decent, so I knew this was very much real and was, in fact, happening. He told me that they had been in a long-distance relationship for a few years, and that was the reason why I'd never found out about it. Catherine and her future husband told me that they were having a wedding in his city, so it would be convenient for his parents, and that he was going to fly us both out there. He assured me that he was grateful for me to plan the wedding for him and organize everything since he didn't want Catherine to worry. I felt this was really sweet of him. Yesterday, in the early mornings, I could hear some scuffling, so I woke up to check out the noise. I noticed Catherine tiptoeing her way around the house as she got ready. I also noticed that she had her luggage packed. Having just woken up from sleep, I was confused for a moment, so I looked at her curiously. When I asked her about where she was going, she jumped in fright as she had not seen me standing silently in the stairway. I asked her if something had happened, and she turned red in embarrassment as if she was trying to hide something from me. She then looked me straight in the eye and told me that she had hoped I would not have woken up since it would have made things so much easier. I asked her what she meant, and she went on to tell me that she was leaving. She told me that now that she was getting married, she didn't want to live in this house anymore. My eyes widened in surprise as I searched her face, trying to decipher if she was pranking me or not. I asked her what about her house, and she replied that she had already contacted a real estate agent and given them a copy of her keys so they would be showing it to potential customers. I then asked her what about me, since she was doing all these things without even giving me a heads up or discussing it with me. Catherine shook her head and told me that there was nothing for her to discuss and that she knew I would overreact, which is why she wanted to silently walk away from me. I don't know why, but hearing her hurtful words, my eyes filled up with tears, which only made Catherine more irritated. I guess she continued to tell me how she had hated living with me all these years and she never really considered me as her sister, which is why she didn't want her future husband to meet me. I asked her what about the wedding, and she laughed, telling me that I was ridiculous for even asking about it because I should know my place and that I was just unwanted trash in her life. She then informed me that her cab was waiting outside to take her to the airport, so she didn't have time to answer any of my questions before closing the door. She told me not to ever contact her again and that I should move out as soon as possible so that the house could be sold in time. After she left, I remember sitting down on the floor and just taking it all in for a moment. I felt like I was in a bad dream, but this very much seemed real. I started to cry as my heart broke knowing that my sister, the only family I had left, hated me so much as to discard me. Now that she was clearly done using me, I had given up my scholarship, degree, and dreams to take care of her, and she had tossed me aside like I meant nothing. In a fit of anger, I decided to call the wedding florist and singer to cancel their appointments. I had been paying for them as a gift to my dear sister, but now that I knew I wasn't invited, I felt no obligation to continue. I know my sister is in for a surprise since she won't be able to rebook them, especially the singer who will likely get booked up. She's probably going to call and shout at me, but I don't care. I am so hurt by her betrayal. I just don't understand where I went wrong in my life. Did I do something to make my sister hate me so much? I'd rather be petty and try to get back at my sister after being uninvited from her wedding. Update 1. Hey guys, so I feel much better after reading all your stories. Thank you to everyone who reached out to me in my personal DMs to check in on me. I promise I'm doing much better now that I know I am not alone. To everyone asking as to why I sacrificed for my sister, I do blame myself. As the oldest, I thought this was what I was supposed to do. I think it would have been better for me to continue getting my degree, and Catherine should have lived at an orphanage, but now it's too late to regret. I feel like moping about my decision years ago is not going to change anything. Update 2. Okay, so as expected, my sister called me to yell at me for canceling her florist and wedding singer. At first, I didn't pick up her call, but after her persistently calling me, I decided to pick up. She told me that apparently I had no right to cancel them without at least giving her a heads up and that she could have paid for them instead. I laughed and told her to never call me back again as I had done exactly what she deserved. She continued to tell me how both she and her fiancé think that I'm extremely selfish and that this is why our parents never loved me. Before she could speak further, I disconnected the call as I felt so pissed hearing her words and blocked her immediately. I have no idea how she has the audacity to be angry at me when she literally abandoned me and asked me to move out while I spent years of my life sacrificing and taking care of her. How can some family members be this ungrateful and vile? I am just done with her. I don't care if her fiancé brainwashed her or she has always been this way. She can do whatever she wants. I am done. Update 3. Hey everyone. It's been several months since I last updated here. I just wanted to let you know that I moved out of my sister's place, and I am currently living in a rented apartment. I have blocked my sister from everywhere, and she doesn't have my new address, so there is no way she can ever disturb my peace. I have no idea about her life, but as much as I am angry with her, I wish her nothing but the best. A lot of y'all pointed out to me how our parents are to be blamed for traumatizing both of us, and this is exactly why I don't hate my little sister even after everything she put me through. I know she will get her karma, and when she does, it will be on her own. I am concentrating on taking care of myself and focusing on my skincare and job. I have started to go out for many self-dates, which bring me a lot of joy. I have been reading self-care books and joined a gym. I am mentally much better than I was a few months ago. I think I'm going to be just fine. Thank you to anyone who stuck by me through this wild ride. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Sister lied to her friends for years, claiming our parents are homophobic and that I physically abused her. For being not great at explaining things, so be with me. I guess so. About 3 years ago, my 15-year-old older sister, 17-year-old Leah's fake name, personality basically did a 180 overnight. She went from being the sweet, reliable big sis to kind of snappy and closed off. She stopped doing chores, would get an attitude if anyone reminded her, spent all day in her room, you get the point. I was 12 at the time, so I was just like, why is she acting like that? My brother, 21, was moved out and busy with school and whatnot. In the beginning, my parents chalked it up to teenage girl hormones, which was also technically part of the issue, but also one night she just came out of her room crying and told us she is bisexual. My parents were extremely supportive of this. So was my brother because he's gay. I wasn't educated on this kind of stuff at the time, so I didn't get it until my parents explained it to me and why it was such a big deal to her. And I was just like, cool. Good for you, sis. So anyways, her behavior got better after that, and she was being nice to us again. She didn't hang out with me as much, which is like, what teenage girl wants to be around their little sister? So fast forward 3 years later, me and my sister are really close again, or at least I thought we were. One thing I've noticed, along with my parents, is that her friends started acting very weird towards us. Like they wouldn't talk to us when they came over, if they did, or would occasionally make backhanded remarks or roll their eyes when we spoke. It was weird, but again, this was only when they came over, which was rarely, so me and my parents kind of just brushed them off like, whatever, they don't have to like us. I just found out why they act like this, probably like an hour ago. I was peacefully binge-watching an anime when my phone started buzzing like crazy. When I checked, I was added into a group chat on IG by her friends. In this group chat, they were basically bashing me for being a horrible person. They were calling me homophobic, a spoiled brat, terrible sister, golden child, home wrecker, kept telling me I need to apologize to my sister for abusing her. So obviously I'm confused. When I expressed my confusion to them, they told me to stop acting dumb and innocent. Later, they realized I was being serious and genuinely did not know what they were talking about. That's when they sent me a bunch of screenshots between them and my sister. To sum things up, my sister has fed her friends a very wild story about her life and how we treat her. Our parents are extremely homophobic and are kicking her out at 18 because of her sexuality when she came out. I quickly became the favorite child. I'm spoiled and get everything I want, and because of this, I treat her badly for fun. I hit her, steal her stuff, verbally abuse her, and call her homophobic slurs. Not only do my parents allow it, they encourage it. She's forced to do all of the chores and cooking in the house, including cleaning my room. This girl does not know how to cook. She lied about other stuff like having autism and me making fun of her for it, which is crazy because I'm the one with autism. There's so much more. The screenshots go back like 2 years, so she's been telling them this for close to 3 years. I asked them why it's taken them this long to confront me. They said she begged them not to confront or talk to us about it because apparently it will make things worse for her, and her plan was just to go and see with us once she's 18, but they couldn't hold back this time because the most recent thing she told them was that apparently I found out about the guy she likes and immediately found his social media and started texting him. Now he won't talk to her. So, not the abusing, but this was the straw that broke the camel's back for them. I debunked as much as I could, sent them pics from pride festivals we went to with her, sent them pics of us, we take a lot together, sent them pics of my brother with his boyfriend. They were pissed, but I asked them not to do anything until I figure out how to deal with it because apparently my sister is the abused black sheep of the family. They agreed. The convo about me stealing the boy she likes happened a few hours ago. I checked on my sister, and she was peacefully sleeping, so she doesn't know about the GC. As for me, I'm having many emotions about this. Shocked, hurt, angry. Feels like a huge slap in the face. I don't know how to go about this. I don't even know why she's doing it. For attention? Like Reddit, what should I do? Comments where OP has replied, Queen Legolas. Is it possible she found her coming out to you guys as anticlimactic and felt the need to create her own narrative or something? Wouldn't be the first time I've read about someone doing something like this. I read another post of this woman smearing against her parents about blogging about how horribly she was treated, and her parents got wind of it and exposed her. She got in trouble for that. She was an adult too. I suggest inviting all the friends and the parents and confronting her together so she doesn't continuously change her narrative. It might feel like ganging up on her, but this is how you catch her in her lies. She's almost 18. She could leave soon and destroy your family's reputation. She's already doing that, but she could lie about all that in her college applications and other stuff. Have your parents contact her therapist to update on what she's been up to. OP. I honestly have no clue. I wrote in another comment that reading the MSGS from the screenshots her friend sent me, I couldn't even recognize her. She sounds like another person in these texts, that I thought her friends were just fabricating it. At home, she's completely normal, doesn't lie, sweet as always, mature. You get the idea. Can you send me a link to that post, PLS? Smile. Editor's note. The text was saved before it got deleted. Update 1. December 30th, 2023. First off, I want to thank everyone for the advice. You all helped me get my thoughts in order, so I really appreciate that. So now for the update. I talked to my parents, and it went kind of how I expected, kind of not. Also, I know this is kind of late. I do apologize for that. I stayed up most of the night, A, because I was reading her comments and whatnot, and B, couldn't sleep that much, LOL. Got about 2 hours in, but I went with the obvious advice y'all gave me and took screenshots of everything, including the MSGS from the last night GC. My dad gets home earlier than my mom, and my sister has a part-time job, so I spoke to my dad first. Obviously, he was furious, shocked, hurt. It was hard watching it happen since I love my dad. He also apologized a lot, as I'm the one who had to find this out and sit him down. Anyway, Mom got home, and my dad wanted to talk to her alone, so I went in my room. This is the unexpected part. I heard my parents arguing a lot, and I'll skip the details, but I later found out that Mom knew about Leah's lies. She found out about 5 months ago and didn't tell my dad. I don't know the details, but apparently she made my sister promise not to do it anymore and just trusted that she wouldn't. Safe to say my dad was pissed. Leah got home, and things got worse. More screaming from Leah. It was hard not to hear because I was literally in the house, but my dad said that Leah was punching and scratching her legs, threatening to kill herself, also screaming that she was going to kill me, so I was kind of scared to leave my room. Literally never heard my sister scream like that before. My dad was already mad that my mom went behind his back and kept him out of something that involves his child. My mom defended herself, saying that she was just protecting Leah and that she's just a kid. But my dad is smart enough to realize that Leah is clearly not mentally well and said she needed to be put in MH. A lot of you said the same. From what I heard and what my dad told me, my mom begged him not to, but Dad was already pissed about what she did, so he threatened to leave her if she didn't comply. There was more arguing, but eventually they did drive her to the hospital. Obviously, I haven't seen her. Me and my dad are now at my grandparents', Dad's side, and he is not currently speaking to my mom, but he did tell her that if she tries to take Leah out, then she is ending their marriage. I also spoke to my brother, and obviously he was hurt but concerned for our sis, so there's that. My dad and I have talked a lot, good talks. He apologized to me for everything going on, but it's not his fault, so there's nothing to forgive. If anything, I feel more bad about the situation, but me and my dad are good. I'm not sure exactly where my parents' relationship stands right now, but Dad told me not to worry about adult stuff and to just focus on being a kid and going to school, so that's what I'm going to try and do. But that's basically everything for now. I will update if anything else happens. Now for some comments. Bexy85. You were so brave, and I'm so happy you told your parents. It's wonderful that your dad has you and your sisters back. Your mom seems scared and obviously ill-equipped to handle the gravity of your sister's symptoms. Your dad's right, though. He's got this. You're safe and loved. It takes work, but now that your sister's actions and symptoms are in the open, you all can start to heal. By telling your dad, you started the healing journey. That's huge and an amazing thing. For some reassurance regarding your sister, 7 years ago, my sis had several psychotic breaks. It was a combo of drugs, complex trauma, later diagnosed BPD, so a different situation, but it did result in her threatening to kill me, and she wanted to. As she was taken to the MH, it was scary. After her doing a ton of work, therapy, taking her meds, etc., she is leveled, honest, and just a little weird. We have a strong and very honest relationship. OP. I didn't mention this in either of my posts because I didn't think it was relevant, but now it kind of is. An issue with my mom is that ever since Leah came out, she does kind of coddle her and make excuses for her shitty behavior. Like example, why is Leah being kind of rude today? Mom. Oh well, I'm sorry. She's just young and trying to navigate her sexuality as a young teenager. And you get it, LOL. Cobalt. Wait. During her freak out, did your sister at any point try to explain why she did that? I mean, I have a pretty good idea why, but I want to hear what she had to say. Also, please stick with your dad. OP. She didn't explain. No. First, Dad said she was lying. She said her friends were trying to get her in trouble. Then she said I was trying to get her in trouble, but Dad wasn't having it. She tried making excuses, but in the end, I didn't find out the reason from her. Commentator asks about the possibility of OP's mom hiding from the family and thinking it was a phase that the sister might get over with. OP, I have a theory as to why. Unfortunately, my mom has always been the person to run or turn away from difficult situations. I think that in my mom's heart she knew she needed to do something about it, but at the same time my sister is her sweet angel, and my mom just didn't want to face the possibility that Leah is anything other than her sweet angel, so she ignored it and forgot it happened. Commentator has expressed concerns for OOP, and if she is able to keep her personal things away from her sister if released. OP. Most of her lies were about me, weirdly enough. It's just so crazy how she can be so loving towards me. But if you read those messages, you'd think she hated me. She didn't just make up lies about how I treat her. She would bash my character any chance she got, and so would her friends. Things I always thought she loved about me when she was actually making fun of it behind my back for years. I don't know if my dad is considering divorce or not, marriage counseling for sure. How he sees it is, if she kept a secret about something so huge for months involving his child, what else is she hiding? Also, I will talk to my dad about erasing me from her phone LOL. And people can say what they want, but I will not be giving her a pass for what she did because her mental health is mental health or not. She made a choice to actively bash and destroy my character behind my back for 3 years. She is my sister, and I will always love and care for her. And I am rooting for her to get better. But as of right now, I don't have to like her. It's going to take a long time for her to earn my trust back and forgive her if she even wants that. I don't think my sister even likes me LOL. I don't have to be the fire that keeps her warm. Commentator asks about OOP's sister's admission to the mental health facility and if the sister will get therapy. OP. Like I said before, I don't know the ins and outs of therapy or mental hospitals. I wasn't there when they took her. All I know is they were gone for a few hours before they came back, and me and my dad went to my grandparents. I asked my dad about it, and they said it honestly depends on the situation and what the person is dealing with. When they took her, her legs were bleeding and swollen from hurting herself, plus the details of what happened previously. So yes, as of right now, she is in a 72-hour hold or whatever. It's not just the fact that she was making threats. She was literally injured from hurting herself. D in 14124. It's probably a good idea to limit her internet access for a bit after she gets out or to monitor it a lot. There's a chance she might start spreading lies on there too if she's given the chance right after coming back. Also, I know you said that your father isn't going to go for divorce yet, but please tell him to still gather evidence now of what your mom did, just in case. Theoretically, if it does come to divorce, if your sister ends up in sole or majority custody of your mother, I'm willing to bet that she's going to keep enabling your sister, and since your mom did already, your sister would probably ask to be with her at your ages. Courts usually let teens decide who to be with. Your father would have to prove why that would be bad, just based off my experiences going through a ton of custody battles when I was younger between my parents. OP. Yeah, my dad has already said that he will do everything to help my sister get better, but she's not getting a pass because of her mental issues. She still chose to do something awful and continue doing it for 3 years. She's not going to have the same privileges she had when she gets out. No phone or other entertainment devices for a while and no hanging with friends outside of school. Not that she is anymore. The point is, if I didn't find out when I did, something very catastrophic could have happened, like getting CPS called on them or worse. Dad said that Leah needs to understand that as much as good behavior gets rewarded, bad actions have bad consequences. As for my parents, I still have no idea. They did end up speaking on the phone earlier, but it was pretty short. All I know right now is that Dad doesn't trust Mom and thinks she might be hiding other stuff, and he definitely wants to get marriage counseling and possibly family therapy for all of us. Update 2. January 7th, 2024. Hey guys, it's been a minute, but I have another update if y'all are still interested. Also, thanks again for the sweet comments. It means more than you know. I'll start with some positive stuff first. I got to see my brother and his BF. They took me and my dad to the movies and out to dinner. It was really fun. It took my mind off things. New Year's was really fun. I spent it with my dad's side of the family. I haven't shared too much detail with friends because this is a family matter, but from what they know, they've been super supportive and sweet. Now on to other stuff. Leah was supposed to get out on the 1st, but that didn't end up happening. She did get out on the 5th and is at home with our mom again. I repeat, I don't know how all that stuff works. I had a conversation with my dad about not feeling comfortable going home and being around my sister and mom just yet, and he was very understanding, but he did have to go back for obvious reasons, and my grandparents were more than pleased to keep me there LOL. About my sister. From what I know, her first day out she didn't talk to anyone, and basically just slept the rest of the day. Second day was a little rough. She wasn't happy about not getting her phone back or having some privileges taken from her. My mom tried to fight with my dad about it but basically gave up, as she's still in hot water with him. When Mom found out I wasn't coming home right away and wasn't really open to talking to Leah about the situation yet, she got pretty upset and sent me a message. She basically said that I can't be mad at Leah because she's not well and needs all the support she can get right now. And apparently she's in distraught that I don't want to talk to her and I'm making things worse. Okay, literally never cared less. Leah does have depression and anxiety. I don't know any more than that other than she is being medicated. I'm pretty sure my dad did talk to my sister's therapist to update her on the situation. My dad did go through my sister's phone, and it wasn't cute. He found a GC where my sister and her friends would basically harass this girl from their school. Reason? No clue. Not just for that situation, but for the whole situation in general. My dad did have to find the numbers of Leah's friends' parents and let them know of what's been going on. I have no clue what's happening with them, but it's none of my business. Leah did admit that the lying was for attention and false sympathy, and she never meant for it to go this far. Not sure if I believe that entirely. I don't think I need it, but my dad also wants to put me in therapy, so I'm just going with it LOL. Big issue right now. My mom continues to coddle and enable my sister. My sister knows this too, so she hasn't been going to my dad about anything because she knows that he is going to actually parent her. My mom will try to stand her ground with him, but then the waterworks start and blah blah blah. It's annoying, and it's making my dad upset. It's the fact my sister knows she can get my mom to do what she wants. It's manipulative and gross. I have gone back to school, and Leah is coming back soon. I'm worried for when that happens. A lot of you said she might try and spin some story with teachers or counselors, but also, as of right now, my sister is essentially friendless, and I'm not going to talk to her at school either. I mean, it's the consequences of her own actions, but I can't help but pity her. I just don't want her loser ex-friends to come up and be mean to her. At the end of the day, I think that inevitably there will be a meeting with Leah, my parents, ex-friends and their parents, and the girl that Leah and her friends harassed. I already said this in a comment, but I'm going to say it here too. Regardless of what y'all think, I do not plan on forgiving or speaking to my sister anytime soon LOL. She does not get a pass because her mental health is. She still actively chose to do something disgusting and continued to do that for 3 years. She did not just make up lies about how I treat her. Her and her loser squad would actively make fun of / bash my character any chance they got. Looks, hobbies, interests was all bashed. I would never let someone speak about my sister the way she let them speak about me. I love her and genuinely hope she gets better, but I don't have to like her. My mom can think I'm a brat, and my sister can cry about it as much as she wants. I don't care. It's going to take a long time for me to trust her again. It honestly terrifies me to the core how insanely two-faced a person can be. Literally baffles me. Main issue right now, mom and dad. My dad wanted to fight for their marriage. He really did. Looked into marriage counseling and I see immediately, but after more talking / arguing about my sister, my mom lying and continuing with her BS, my dad ended up finding something very disgusting that my mom has been hiding from him that has left him heartbroken. I'd rather not get into it, but I'm sure you'll have some ideas. I'm still letting all of this process, so no, my dad does not plan on continuing with my mother. Things are a little tough right now. My dad can't exactly just leave our house, mainly because my sister refuses to leave my mom, and understandably my dad doesn't want to leave Leah alone with her, so he's staying just until some legal stuff is sorted out, and I don't plan on going back anytime soon. That's basically it for now. I'll give an update again, we'll just have to wait and see. I love my dad so much. He's my best friend, so I'm just going to try my best to cheer him up and be a good kid during these times. Thanks again for all the support. Y'all are great. Comments. Anilla Blue Violets. It's situations like this that make you realize who your parents' favorite child is, and it sounds like Leah is your mom's. Does your mom have a history of doing the same thing? Lying for attention? OPTBH, I've always been closer with my dad. Leah's always been closer to my mom growing up. My mom never showed any blatant favoritism between us, but it's always been kind of obvious, even to members outside of immediate family, which child is closer with which parent. To answer your last question, I'm honestly not sure if she was like that when she was younger. If you haven't already guessed, some people have. My dad recently found out my mom had an affair, and from what I've observed and what I've been updated on, my mom refuses to take accountability for it and keeps playing the victim. Update 3. Silly, March 6, 2024. Honestly, didn't think I would be making another update, but the account has just been sitting here, and I felt bad for leaving everyone on a cliffhanger lol. Also, I realized that my last post was actually update 3, not 2. Sorry if that confused anyone. Spoilers. It got worse. So I'll start with my parents. They aren't speaking well, they are through attorneys, but my mom can't be civil for 2 seconds in the same room as my father. I did write this in a comment, but yes, my mother was having an affair. There were some theories that my sister found out about the affair, which triggered her breakdown, or she found out, so mom and her were covering for each other. My mom's affair started just short of a year ago, and Leah had no clue. It's unknown if this was my mother's only affair. Now on to Leah. She got much worse. My mom basically went against everything my dad and her agreed on and gave her phone back plus other privileges. My dad wasn't even surprised anymore and just turned her service off. He pays for all our phones. He's also planning on taking mom and sis off the family plan. She did go back to school, which turned out the way I expected. She's doing school from home now, and I'll get into that. In my last post, I believe I mentioned that my dad went through my sister's phone and found a very disturbing group chat where Leah and the losers would bully this girl. I don't think I can actually classify what they were doing to this girl as bullying, though. I talked about it in private messages with someone, but it's not something I want to repeat on here. Please just know that it was very, very disturbing and gross enough so that the school needed to get involved, which did happen. I'll just call the girl Claire. I won't get into the details of what happened during the school meeting, but ex-friends and my sister got expelled. Yes, expelled. Leah's one and only excuse for the bullying was she was mean to me. My parents were just going to enroll Leah in an alternative school, but her ex-friend group was also going to that school. They were angry with my sister, threatening to jump her and stuff. My mom feared for her safety, ironic, so she's doing it from home instead. I actually spoke to Claire privately, mostly to apologize on behalf of my sister and let her know we had no clue. She was honestly one of the sweetest people I've ever spoken with. I feel terrible. She did not deserve what my sister was putting her through, and it honestly makes me ashamed that I'm related to her. Claire is doing okay, though. She has a good support system and is in therapy. Leah has completely stopped going to therapy and taking her meds and basically switched from her victim mentality to just straight up being disgusting to everyone in her life that cares about her, with the exception of being nice to my mom when she wants something. Leah and I did eventually end up speaking through texting when she got her phone back. She sent me a long paragraph on Instagram, which I won't post on here, but to sum it up, it was basically just her saying that everything that's going on with our family right now is my fault and all of this could have been avoided if I just talked to her first about the screenshots. Not inherently untrue, but I also don't really care. Originally, I believe my dad was going to try and get primary custody of Leah because he didn't trust my mother for obvious reasons, and I don't know the details of the discussions he's had with his lawyer about it, but Leah's going to be 18 soon, plus with everything else going on, I don't think he's going to do that anymore. My dad and I did have a long conversation about Leah and what the future looks like for her. To sum that up, he will always love and care for her as his daughter, but as a person, he doesn't particularly like her at the moment. If Leah came to him and showed genuine signs of remorse plus wanting to get better, he would do so in a heartbeat, but as for right now, you can't help someone who doesn't want help. Forcing it won't make things better. As for my mother and I, we aren't speaking either. Our last conversation was mostly her screaming at me and berating me over the phone, mostly over me being a brat and not wanting to come home lol. I don't really know what the future looks like right now. All I know is I'm going to stick with my dad. Both my dad and I have been going to therapy, which has been keeping things lighter and less stressful, so that's good. But that's basically the update. I'm sorry to all of those who are really rooting and praying for my sister to get better. This is not easy for anyone in my family right now, but I do apologize once again. Thanks for all the support and sweet comments. It means a lot. I did end up showing my dad the posts, which he thankfully wasn't upset about. He appreciates all the support Reddit has shown our family. I may update again if anything major happens, but if I don't. Thanks again. Now on to the next story. Story 10. My wife told me she was going out with friends, but I found out the truth and surprised her. I want to share my story here because my ex-wife, who I thought we would spend the rest of our lives together, cheated on me. My wife and I were lovers right from college. We met each other as freshmen in college, and our love story began there. 2 years after graduating from college and getting good-paying jobs, my wife and I officially tied the knot. We always looked forward to getting married, especially her. She looked forward to wearing a wedding band and a pretty gown. So we had a small wedding and started life on a fresh slate. Back in college, we both studied different courses, and as expected, we had different jobs. I worked as an electrician while my wife was in the business sphere. She was a business consultant, and we were both comfortable. We split the bills equally, and we shared responsibilities. I wasn't the kind of man who would leave all the chores for her, so I ensured I helped whenever I could. I did this because I knew she was always exhausted when she returned from work. So we worked on a plan to make life easier since we still lived in the same state where we attended college. What we did was all of us who were close college buddies would plan a hangout or get together so we could continue with our friendship bond. It wasn't something we did all the time. It was something we planned every 3 to 4 months. Most times we'd even push it to the end of the year so we could have enough time to prepare well. It was never something big. We were only catching up and trying to support one another however we could. We did this from the next year we left college, and we continued with it even after we married. There were always people who didn't make it to our hangouts, and that's because they were either in another state always busy with work or living in a different country. While my wife and I were still in college, there was this particular guy I didn't like. He loved to brag, and he and my wife had a history before I met her. I didn't like him because I always felt like I was competing with him to get my wife's attention whenever he was around. I know it sounds insecure, but I had to ask my wife to pick between him and our relationship, and she picked me. After she picked me, I asked her to stop talking to him and cut all sorts of communication with him, and she did just that. We were married for almost 3 years, and towards our 3rd anniversary, I noticed that my wife started acting differently. She wasn't cold or anything. She just seemed less concerned with what was going on with me. Before I noticed her changes, we used to be very close, and we talked and gossiped about everything. But she just changed, and I couldn't help but notice it. Even when she started acting differently, I never thought she could have been cheating on me. I just thought it was one of her aggressive mood swings and expected she would return to her normal self with time. One day, after returning from work and relaxing a bit, I decided to log into my Facebook account on our home computer. I didn't have the Facebook app on my personal phone or computer because I was a social media addict, and the only way I could remain productive was by deleting the apps and downloading them on our home computer, so I could only surf social media in my spare time. In fact, this was a little productivity rule my wife and I followed, so we only used the home computer for social media like Facebook and Instagram. On that fateful day, as I was about to log into my Facebook account on the computer, I realized that my wife's account was still on. Initially, I just wanted to log out on her behalf, but my curiosity had the best of me. She had a lot of unread messages, and I decided to take a quick look at the people she had been talking to and the kind of conversations they had. To my greatest surprise, I discovered that my wife had been talking to the same college friend she had a fling with before we met. I was shocked to read the flirty conversation between my wife and this guy she knew I didn't like. As I went down their chat, I discovered that they had been seeing each other weekly, and she was even talking about going to his place later that week so they could catch up and finish off where they had left the last time. At that moment, everything felt like a joke to me. I was even laughing in disbelief as I read their conversation. I found it very difficult to believe that my wife had been cheating on me for months. While I waited for her to return to her old self, after minutes of thinking of all the possible reasons my wife had to cheat on me, I realized there was no good enough reason for her to break my trust like that. I even became so angry, and I took pictures of their conversation with my phone. I wanted to pay her for the pain she caused me, so I changed her Facebook password, and since her email was logged in on the computer, it was easier for me to reset her password. After that, I posted the pictures of their conversation on her Facebook account, made a post as my wife, and announced to the world that my wife was a cheap cheat and I destroyed my marriage by cheating on my good husband. After that, I logged out of her account and went to her room to pack my property. Later, when she came home that evening, she met me while I was quiet and drinking, and she began to tell me how she received calls from some of our mutual Facebook friends about a post she had made on Facebook. She said someone must have hacked into her account and made that post to ruin her marriage. She even tried to log in, but when she couldn't get the correct password, she concluded that her account had been hacked. I didn't say anything while she talked. I kept drinking, and I watched her as she talked and complained. When I was done drinking to my satisfaction, I told her I knew she was cheating on me with the same guy she had a history with back in college, and she denied it. To show how manipulative she was, she began to cry and said I believed a stranger's post online and not her. I didn't even know when I started laughing, and she was shocked to see me react that way. I couldn't pretend everything was okay, so I told her I was the one who made the post, and I expressed my disappointment in her. After talking, I went into our room, packed my stuff, and left her. After I left, she kept calling. She said she would explain and that I was mixing things up, and I didn't give her the opportunity to explain. Weeks passed, and I didn't take her calls or return them. Aside from being so heartbroken, I started drinking, and it took me a very long time to quit because of her infidelity. I won't lie, my wife's betrayal wrecked my life. I don't know how people get cheated on and move on like it's nothing. I tried to do that, but the harder I tried, the more emotionally messed up I was. She even claimed that she still loved me and that I shouldn't let her little mistake ruin our future together. Even though I still loved her, I knew I couldn't be with her. We divorced and I carried on with my life. I still feel fulfilled that she was so embarrassed, and all of her friends saw the kind of person she was, and they even judged her. Whenever I recall how she played me for a fool, I just wish she had the most miserable life out there. I'm so glad my friends were there to support me and talk sense to me. If not, maybe I would have taken her back and not share this story. On the other hand, her app dumped her because he was more comfortable with their affair when she was still married. I have moved on, but I'm so afraid of women right now. The only women I can keep loving are my mom and sisters. I've learned the hard way that true love and loyalty don't exist, except it's coming from a dog or a cat. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Sensed something was off with my wife, so I snooped through her phone. What I discovered led me to make the most difficult decision of my life. I have recently been starting to wonder if my wife might be cheating, but I'm not sure what to do from here. I have no smoking gun for evidence, so I don't want to confront her or bring it up in case nothing is happening or to have her cover things up. It has just been small things, a spidey sense. About 4 months ago, she started working out a lot more and became much more interested in how she looks. She is very attractive, but never really wore much makeup or did much with her hair. She also started being protective with her phone, which I know is a bad sign. It is normal for us to go into each other's phones, but now it never leaves her side. And if I ask for it to take a picture or something, she will tell me to use mine. She has also been staying late at work more often and has been taking a few more out-of-town trips for work in this last 4 months. She hasn't initiated any kind of intimacy and only gives me pecking-type kisses. I tried to initiate with her a handful of times, and she rejected me a few times. A few times she let me go through with it, but wasn't engaged and just laid there. It made me feel really bad, worse than getting rejected outright. I brought up the lack of intimacy a while back, and she said that she was exhausted all the time from being a mom, work, and lifting weights. She said that she would try to do a better job and kissed me later that night, but nothing has changed. I have wondered if it might be some kind of midlife crisis kind of thing. There is a guy at her work that I am thinking could be trouble. My wife used to talk about him a lot, but a few months ago she quit mentioning him. But I know they still work closely together, from what I can gather. He is married with kids and told my wife that he is having marital issues. I met him briefly a few times and he basically ignored me. We were around a lot of other people. He isn't nearly as attractive as me and definitely not in great shape like me. Not to brag, but it's true. I am big and strong, and he is kind of average and a little overweight, but he dresses flashy and is outgoing and likes to drink. I don't really like drinking, and my wife has mentioned a few times that she wished I would go out drinking every now and then. I graduated high school and he has a master's degree. He also makes a lot more money than I do. I train fighters and love what I do, but make a very modest living. This guy probably makes 6 times what I do and flaunts what he has. I just bring up all that as my assessment of how we differ. The biggest thing that I have been wondering about is that this last trip for work was at a tropical resort type of place, and my understanding at the time was that there were a big group of them going. Turns out that it was just my wife, the flashy guy, and the CEO. The CEO is very old and doesn't really interact socially. He is just all business. In my imagination, my wife and this other guy spent a lot of time together over that week, doing who knows what. My dilemma is that I want to see if my gut feeling is right, but don't want to cause a bigger issue by accusing her or asking. We have had a few ups and downs over the years, but have had a pretty good overall marriage from my side, no major issues or anything. I am not the most outgoing guy and I don't make much money, which has been a small issue for my wife. She says I am not living up to my potential and I could make a lot more money doing something else. I don't want to make it sound like she is obsessed with money in any way, but I know women are more comfortable with a bigger nest egg. She thinks I can do other things, but I am not really qualified for anything other than fighting or training fighters. That's basically been my entire life, or possibly being a personal trainer. None of those things are big money makers, but other than those things she seems pretty happy. A friend of mine said I should keep my suspicions to myself and start doing things to spy and collect evidence if it's there, but I feel weird about violating her privacy. If she is cheating, I can't imagine I would ever stay with her. I hope I am wrong about all of this, but thoughts of her cheating are starting to flood my mind, and I feel like I need to find out either way. We have 2 kids, and that is the part that scares me. I am involved in every part of my kids' lives, and my heart would be broken to only see them half the time. Sorry for the long post. I would love to hear some ideas on how to deal with this. Update 1. I finally did some snooping and looked at the detailed cell phone records online. I noticed that there were texts to one number that were made in the middle of the night. They were in the hundreds. I called the number from a payphone, and it went to one of her coworkers, the one I thought could be trouble. I was able to get her phone while she was in the shower, and the text conversation was the one thing deleted. Also, that guy's number was saved in her phone and a female's name. I am now very worried about the out-of-town trips that she was on where this guy was with her. I had to leave the house and cool off. I was able to get it together enough to come home, but don't know what to do from here. If I confront her with what I have, she will probably explain it away. I don't know if I should try to keep it quiet and get more evidence or if I should come out with it sooner. I am really angry. I am furious at her, but also wanting to go after the guy. It will take everything I have to not do that. I am worried that she will admit to inappropriate flirting, and I won't have enough evidence to get her to admit it all. I am going to stay awake during the time she texts him and then interrupt her and ask her who she is texting. See if she lies to me. Update 2. Late last night, after everybody went to bed, I pretended to be asleep and waited to see if she got out of bed to get on her phone. Sure enough, she gets up a little after midnight and goes into another room and closes the door. I wait a few minutes, and I got up and quickly opened the door and walked up to her and said I couldn't sleep and asked what she was doing. I caught her mid-text and was standing over her too fast for her to delete anything. I watched her hand as she slowly tried to tuck the phone away. She said she couldn't sleep either and was texting a girlfriend. I had a plan and went into it. I got on top of her and started kissing her and asked if she wanted to fool around. As I expected, she said she couldn't, so I started laughing and tickling her and made a comment that she must be more into the girlfriend that she was texting than me. Then I started to playfully wrestle with her and got the phone. I could see the panic in her eyes. She tried to get it back from me, but I turned away and held it in the air like I was playing keep away. I was laughing and acting like I was having fun the entire time. I told her that I was going to call this girlfriend and ask if she was into my wife. My wife yelled out, "Please don't call her." I started walking away and pulled up the text messages. And I saw one that said, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." I pressed the call feature, and it seemed like it took forever, but sure enough, the guy answered. I hadn't planned out what to say, so I just hung up. Then I started reading through the texts in front of my wife. I asked her if she thought her girlfriend answered or a guy. She didn't say anything. Then I started reading off the texts out loud and asked her why she was sending this to a guy at night. She said she didn't know. I asked her if she needed to tell me anything. She was quiet. Then I told her that I had looked at the cell phone records and knew everything. I knew when she would wake up to text this guy and that I knew who the guy was. She started crying and saying she was sorry. Kept my cool. I explained that the next few minutes were very important, and if she didn't tell me the complete truth, that there would be severe consequences. She said she started flirting with her coworker and that he was having marital issues, and it turned into flirting. She said she never did anything with this guy. My fear was she would only admit to what I already knew. I told her that if she can't give me the entire truth, that she needed to pack a bag and leave. She agreed to do that as she cried and said she was sorry. Before she left the house, she asked if I was going to leave her. I told her that it was late and we would discuss that later. She left for her mom's house, and I haven't seen her since, but she was blowing up my phone, so I turned it off. My plan is to try to find a marriage counselor and make an appointment. I want my wife to think I want to work things out for a while. Until then, when I will explain that I am at counseling to get a walkthrough of the process of splitting up. This entire incident last night was something I had planned out in my head since I was pretending to wrestle with her and tickle her. I wanted to cover myself, so I recorded everything with my phone, just in case she tried to accuse me of something. I asked my friend if me recording in our state was legal, and he said it was. I don't think she would ever falsely accuse me of anything, but if I am leaving her, she might get desperate. I am 6 feet 4 inches and an athletic 240 pounds. I'm also an ex-fighter and now train fighters, so if there is any accusation of abuse, I will not be believed and will get arrested and lose my kids. So my plan is to record everything from here on out, just as an insurance policy. I am completely heartbroken right now. My entire family has been blown up. I will miss 50% of my kids' lives growing up and feel destroyed. I had suspected something, but I'm still in shock. The worst part is that this is all just beginning. I want to confront the other guy, but I will need to restrain myself. I was told that he said I looked terrifying when he first saw me, so I would like to scare him. I also saw that he referred to me as the animal in one of the texts after she made a comment about me not being too bright. I don't make much money or have a college degree, but I am an intellectually curious person and read lots of books about all sorts of topics. I am not the smartest guy, but I feel like I am not stupid. I am just devastated. Update 3. My attorney friend was able to recommend a lawyer that specializes in family law. Not only that, but supposedly this guy was also cheated on, and these cases allow him to exact revenge. This is what my friend said when he recommended this lawyer. He is going to be very flexible on his fees and genuinely wants to help. Maybe this is on the positive side of the ledger now. On to the other side, my wife admitted to the affair. She told me that it started as flirting, then turned into an emotional affair, but never turned physical. I saw right through that, and then she finally admitted that it turned physical, which coincided with the point in time when she shut down intimacy with me. I got a lot more details than I thought I could take. It was a very hot and steamy affair. To say this has really messed me up would be an understatement to the highest degree. I am wrestling with my emotions and can't keep a thought in my head. I told my wife it would be best for her to stay with her mom for the time being and that I will take care of the kids so they can be at home and have some stability. My attorney is working like magic. In the meantime, I am in the house and this is a big advantage, according to him. I have also not told her that our marriage is over. She will find that out when she has served the papers, which will be coming soon. I can't keep the intrusive images of my wife and this guy out of my head. I coach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for professional and semi-professional fighters, and I'm trying to give them as much attention as I can. The physicality of my job seems to have been helpful. Obviously, I'm also putting everything into my kids. Outside of BJJ, my passion is learning about new topics. I normally read for a few hours a night to unwind, but I haven't even been able to get through a paragraph without losing focus after seeing that they were referring to me as a stupid animal. I imagine all the other things they may have said. The whole thing has really got to me. I have always been a happy person, but the joy is just gone. On another note, the word has got out on what has happened, and there have been a lot of people offering to assist in any way they can. It definitely helps to feel like I have support. A number of my friends' wives have sprung into action and said they know beautiful women that they want to hook me up with, including a few that know me and are very interested in my upcoming single status. I won't be dating until this is all over with and probably not for a while after that, but knowing that there are a lot of options is a nice feeling. I think I will be okay. Right now, it's just all about the kids. My wife is hysterical and is pushing to stay married. I know I can't get over what she did, so staying together would be delaying the inevitable. Update 4. I am heartbroken, as are my kids. I never thought I would be a single dad. But here I am. My wife seems to be falling into some kind of depression. The guy she cheated with decided that she wasn't worth the trouble, from what I am told. She has started drinking and going out with a lot of random guys that she meets online. There have been more than a handful of times where she called me and begged me to take her back so she can have her old life back. Part of me wanted that, but I have held strong. After she found out how much money she will have to pay me every month, that seems to have made her angry towards me, so I don't have to worry about her calling. My kids don't understand. Every second they aren't with me, I feel miserable. I am also lonely all the time. I haven't spent much time with friends and mostly just stay home. The girl that works at a coffee shop by my frequent even asked me if everything was okay because I look sad. I guess I'm not hiding it as well as I think. There are people I know that want to set me up with women they know, but I don't want to do it because I feel like I am branded as the guy whose wife cheated on him. It has been so long. I have no idea how to date. I had a few fighters do really well on a pretty public stage, and that has been the only spark I have felt in a long time. I really don't know what I will do next. At some point, I need to snap out of it and move on. I just haven't reached the level of motivation, though. I did have somebody I know get into contact with the other guy's wife and show her the proof I had. I just couldn't live with nothing happening to him. I am not allowed to go after him, so this was the next best thing. She didn't believe it at first, but then I heard about there being major marriage issues for them. As far as I know, they are together, but on the rocks. I have a lot of anger over everything. It is crazy to think how life can be fine one minute, then completely upside down the next. One positive that has happened is that I did meet a girl through some friends that I'm interested in. I haven't asked her out or anything, though. She is stunningly beautiful but is about 14 years my junior. I don't know that's a major issue, but that is a pretty big age gap. Given what I have been through, I think my confidence has really been dinged. I feel like she is too attractive for me. She might actually be, I suppose, but I have been thinking about her a lot. So that's been the last half year of my life. I have to say it has been the worst I have ever felt. I always been a very happy person, but just feel dark and gloomy now. Update 5. I do have moments where I feel a sense of sadness or loss, but those are fleeting. For the most part, I feel great. My kids are doing well and they are with me a lot. One of the things that happened after the divorce was my wife had to take in more accounts at work to pay for her new single living situation as well as spousal support to me. She earned a lot more than me. When the pandemic hit, I had a very flexible schedule, so I was able to keep the kids with me and do homeschooling since my job involved physical contact with other people. The pandemic has slowed that down. Not a lot of opportunities for my guys right now. So, in a way, it has been like I'm a stay-at-home dad. I took some time to myself after the whole ordeal. The younger girl I was interested in took a long assignment with her company in Europe. We stayed in touch through technology. After her assignment ended, she came back, and we have been together ever since. She loves me and my kids. She is an extremely compassionate and considerate person. Before we were introduced, I was told that there was an amazing woman that resembled Wonder Woman and was the nicest person you could ever meet. I thought it was too good to be true, but she is absolutely the real deal. I think there will probably be some next steps in our relationship coming soon. Things for my ex have not really worked out. She started drinking and hooking up with random guys she met online. Having to take more accounts has also taken a toll on her. Just in the last few years, she looks like she has aged 15 years. She was always pretty, but the last time I saw her, she looked ragged, like her life force was depleted. A weird thing to say, but that's what it looked like. Her best friend told me that she is miserable and hard to be around. I don't think I will ever understand how a person that is seemingly happy and in control of their life can spiral into such a dark place. My ex's friend did also tell me that she never thought I would leave her after the affair. I think she felt a sense of control over me because of her high income, so the affair had consequences that she didn't anticipate. I do hope she finds peace, for my kids' sake. Other than some challenges due to the pandemic, things are great. I am so glad I immediately ended my first marriage rather than dragging it out. I knew I was making a difficult decision, but that it was the right thing to do. Then I just grinded along. I have no problem inching a little forward every day, knowing eventually I will get through. If you are in this situation, you need to think about things in the long term. You might feel devastated at first, then sad, then depressed, then hopeless, but no matter what, you push ahead. Work out hard every day, too. The key is to try to do one thing every day that improves you or adds to your skill set. Not self-help stuff, but real skills. I got into making short films of the guys I train and learned about videography and editing, which has been a fun hobby. I read more books to learn about all sorts of things. I just tried to do something every day. Small things add up over time. You just need to make sure you are putting in the work and let yourself be patient. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.